Chapter 1730 Invasion of the God Race. Chapter 1730 Invasion of the God Race. Su Zimo and the Dragon Phoenix True Body sprinted and chased after the Hell Witch Emperor and Shadowless Emperor. Initially, the two of them were speeding in one direction. However, when they arrived at the border of the North region, the two emperors split into two directions and fled separately. The eyes of the Hell Witch Emperor shone with ruthlessness and madness as he sped towards the habitat of the witch race in the Middle Continent. At the same time, he withdrew a talisman from his storage bag and tore it apart. Since things had come to this, he had no choice. He had to inform the witch race and prepare to use their final trump card. However, the Shadowless Emperor did not escape to his ancestral ground. After pondering for a moment, he changed directions and sprinted towards the Kunlun ruins in the west. The Shadowless Emperor's thoughts were simple. If he escaped to his ancestral ground, he would definitely lure Desolate Marshal over. At that time, the Rakshasas guarding the ancestral ground would be annihilated as well. The reason why he chose to escape to the Kunlun ruins was because he wanted to fight Desolate Marshal to the death. The Kunlun ruins had a divine power forbidden region, and they would die together. When Su Zimo saw the Hell Witch Emperor and Shadowless Emperor split into two directions, he hesitated for a moment and decided to let the Dragon Phoenix True Body hunt down the Hell Witch Emperor. The direction of the Hell Witch Emperor was clearly the ancestral ground of the witch race. He did not know what other trump cards the Hell Witch Emperor would have if the latter returned to his ancestral ground. The witch race cultivated their essence spirits. As for the essence spirit of the Dragon Phoenix True Body, it was protected by a blazing ball of light, and it was difficult for any killing technique of the witch race targeted at the essence spirit to cause any damage to the Dragon Phoenix True Body. In that aspect, the Green Lotus True Body was comparatively weaker. At that thought, the two true bodies separated and chased after the Hell Witch Emperor and Shadowless Emperor respectively. Su Zimo released all his escape techniques and secret skills. The ethereal wings behind him spread and he used heavenly feet, boundless golden light and zephyr thunder escape at the same time. His speed was at its limits, and he transformed into a streak of light, shrinking the ground into inches and covering thousands of kilometers instantly. Even so, he could not shorten the distance between him and the Shadowless Emperor. Suddenly, a violent quake sounded from the extreme west. A blinding golden light burst forth from the skies of the Kunlun ruins, as though it wanted to tear through the firmaments. The energy fluctuation intensified and even extended to the entire Tianhuang mainland. Even the 4 regions, 3 oceans and 1 continent could sense it. Massive waves surged through the 3 oceans. The living beings of the 10,000 races that were fighting at the borders of the North region revealed shocked expressions as well. Only some God race experts looked at the golden light in the skies of the extreme west in deep thought. Some of the emperors of the God race seemed to have thought of something, and their gazes shone brightly in high spirits. Su Zimo stopped in his tracks and looked at the extreme west with a grim expression. Something had happened. If he was not wrong, the commotion from the extreme west should have come from the Rainbow Cave. The God race had invaded. To think that the God race would invade Tianhuang mainland at this critical juncture. Under normal circumstances, with the existence of the divine power forbidden region in the Kunlun ruins, even if the God race invaded, they would only be at the conjoined body realm at most. They were of no threat to the current Su Zimo. However, more than 1,000 years had passed since the last battle in the Kunlun ruins. The power of the divine power forbidden region was getting weaker. Su Zimo would not be surprised if God's mainland possessed any methods that could break through the divine power forbidden region and enter Tianhuang mainland. The situation would be dire if the main army of God's mainland invaded Tianhuang mainland. God's mainland was a powerful civilization. Although they were both one of the billion minor kiliocosms, the God race had a powerful bloodline and could cultivate bloodline phenomenons from birth. Nobody knew how advanced the civilization of God's mainland was. There was a high chance that the invasion of God's mainland would be even more serious and terrifying than the alliance of the primordial 6 races. More importantly, right now, the 10,000 races of Tianhuang mainland were fighting against one another and suffered immense losses. Be it the demons, humans, or the primordial races, all of them suffered immense losses. The invasion of God's mainland at this moment was akin to adding insult to injury for Tianhuang mainland. Su Zimo stopped and looked towards the west. At that moment, he could only hope that the divine power forbidden region of the Kunlun ruins could be of some use and stop the emperors of God's mainland. The shadowless emperor paused as well and did not continue escaping towards the Kunlun ruins. Suddenly, the golden light above the Kunlun ruins intensified. Immediately after, incomparably powerful auras tore through the skies and transformed into blinding golden pillars of light that surged into the firmaments. Tianhuang mainland was shaken. The emperors of God's mainland had arrived. Only emperors could release such an aura and burst forth with such energy fluctuations. Indeed, before long, a large army of the god race appeared in the skies of the Kunlun ruins. They were dense, and the ones at the front were god race riders. Be it the horses or the god race riders, all of them were clad in armor. The horses of the god race were also heavenly horses with powerful bloodlines. There was a sharp horn on their foreheads that seemed like it could penetrate the firmaments. There were more than 10,000 god race riders, and all of them were at the conjoined body realm. There were 10,000 conjoined body god race beings. If he was not wrong, this was definitely the main force of God's mainland. Of course, the most striking thing was not the 10,000 conjoined body god race riders. In the middle of the god race riders were hundreds of god race patriarchs. Some of them wore armor and wielded swords. Some of them wore long robes and wielded staffs. However, every single god race being was extremely handsome and tall. The women were also incomparably beautiful with graceful figures. Among the hundreds of god race patriarchs, there were 4 emperors of the god race. There were 3 men and a woman, and they were all old. The 4 emperors of the god race held different weapons in their hands. An emperor of the god race wielded a gigantic sword. That gigantic sword was the sword of misfortune that had severely injured Su Zimo previously. Another god race emperor wielded a golden spear that shone with a terrifying aura, as though it could judge everything. The 3rd emperor held a pitch-black shield that emitted a dark aura. The 4th emperor wielded a shimmering divine staff. The 4 emperors each held a powerful divine weapon and channeled the power of the divine weapon, creating a passage through the divine power forbidden region above the Kunlun ruins. The god race army entered Tianhuang mainland safely. Su Zimo narrowed his gaze slightly and looked past the god race army and the hundreds of god race patriarchs to the 4 emperors. Be it the 10,000 conjoined body god race rider army, hundreds of god race patriarchs, 4 god race emperors, or 4 divine weapons, none of them were the most striking. In the middle of the god race army, surrounded by the 4 god race emperors, was a divine throne filled with gems and jade. There was no one holding it down below. However, the divine throne floated over and emitted a divine light. There was a person on the divine throne. The person wore a crown on his head and sat on the divine throne. He looked incomparably noble and dazzling. Even the 4 god race emperors had to obey his orders. The crown emanated a mysterious power that concealed the appearance of the god race being. Chapter 1731 Kill Him. Chapter 1731 Kill Him. Above the Dragon Bone Valley, a few disheveled god race emperors looked at the god race army that was approaching from the extreme west with excited expressions. It's finally here! The sword of misfortune, the shield of calamity, the staff of dawn, and the spear of judgment. The 4 divine judgment weapons of our god race have descended. Let's see who in Tianhuang mainland can defend against them. That should be the god emperor of our god's mainland on the throne. Some of the god race beings that were still fighting at the borders of the north region were even more excited. Although there were also emperors with different titles on God's mainland, only a single person was qualified to be the emperor of God's mainland and be called the God Emperor. Only the God Emperor was qualified to sit on that supreme throne and wear the God Emperor's crown. Legend has it that the crown of the God Emperor was an utmost treasure passed down from the God realm. Other races, including the God race themselves, even emperors of the God race, would die on the spot if they dared to sit on the throne of the God Emperor. Without the recognition of the God Emperor's crown, one would not be able to withstand the weight of the crown and would be crushed to death. One could only be the sole God Emperor of God's mainland upon obtaining the recognition of the two utmost treasures. The civilization of God's mainland originated from these two treasures that were passed down from the God realm. It was an extremely shocking sight. Be it the fight between the emperors above the Dragon Bone Valley or the 10,000 races at the intersection of the North region, everything gradually stopped. The shadowless emperor froze in midair in shock. A moment later, he snapped out of his stupor and frowned slightly. Turning back, he revealed a hesitant expression. At that moment, he was sandwiched in the middle. Su Zimo was at the back and the God Race army at the front. Furthermore, the God Race army advanced extremely quickly and arrived in the middle continent before long, speeding towards the North region. Many God Race riders galloped in the firmaments, and rode on clouds with a torrential aura. The entire void rumbled and trembled under the trampling of the God Race riders as cracks appeared in the void. Heaven and earth rumbled. The shadowless emperor pondered for a moment without turning back. He would definitely die against Su Zimo. Although the God Race army was menacing, the Rakshasa race was still on the same side as the God Race of Tianhuang mainland. Furthermore, as a top emperor, he was a top expert no matter which continent he was in. If he were to bring his Rakshasa race to partner with the God Race, the latter would definitely welcome them. At that thought, the Shadowless Emperor had a plan and charged towards the God Race army. I'm Shadowless of the Rakshasa race and am one of the primordial 9 races of Tianhuang mainland along with the God Race. We're on the same side and fought hand in hand countless times. The Shadowless Emperor was still a distance away from the God Race army when he shouted, I'm willing to lead the Rakshasa race and join forces with our fellow Taoists of the God Race to suppress traitors like Desolate Marshal. How shameless! Long Ran could not help but curse when he saw that. The experts of the Kuan and barbarian races revealed indignant expressions as well. As one of the strongest emperors of Tianhuang mainland, the Shadowless Emperor was the first to submit to the invasion of foreign races. The Shadowless Emperor was very smart. He knew that if he charged forward rashly, there was a high chance he would attract the hostility of the God Race army. Therefore, even from afar, the Shadowless Emperor had already started shouting to express his goodwill with a sincere attitude. Indeed, the speed of the God Race army slowed down. Before long, the God Race army arrived before the Shadowless Emperor and opened up a path for him. In the blink of an eye, the Shadowless Emperor was surrounded by the God Race. Countless gazes landed on the Shadowless Emperor. As the top emperor of Tianhuang mainland, the Shadowless Emperor was still calm and fearless despite being surrounded by so many experts of another race. Greetings, fellow Taoists of the God Race! Against the hundreds of God Race patriarchs, the Shadowless Emperor did not show any arrogance. Instead, he cupped his fists and smiled. The 4 God Race emperors wielding the divine judgment weapons sized up the Shadowless Emperor with scrutinizing gazes. However, the 4 emperors of the God Race did not have any attitude on the surface. Instead, they turned to look at the person on the divine throne with inquiring expressions. The Shadowless Emperor could tell as well. Among the many God Race beings, the one with the highest and noblest status was the person sitting on the divine throne with the crown on his head. Even the 4 God Race emperors with powerful auras had to obey this person. However, that person's appearance was blurry under the cover of the crown. God Emperor, this person has submitted. How should we deal with him? The armored old man with the sword of misfortune on his back clutched his chest with his right hand and bowed slightly to the person on the divine throne, asking in a deep voice. The God Emperor raised his hand slightly. The Shadowless Emperor landed on that person's palm. It was a fair palm that was gentle and tender, even shimmering. It seemed to be the hand of a woman. Just as the Shadowless Emperor was letting his imagination run wild, the God Emperor spoke gently and said 2 words. Kill him! Before the Shadowless Emperor could react, a shout sounded from the side. Kill! The armored old man withdrew the sword of misfortune on his back and slashed down viciously at the shadowless emperor. Although the god race emperor was already an old man, his blood chi was still extremely strong and surged into the skies. In the hands of the old man from the god race, the sword of misfortune emanated a cold and evil aura. The black patterns on the sword shone brightly, and released a black sword chi that tore through the air. The shadowless emperor was alarmed. He had not expected that after comprehending 4 supreme divine powers and choosing to submit as a top-tier emperor, the other party would not give him any chance of survival. The shadowless emperor summoned his destiny dermic treasure hurriedly, and 2 curved sabers that resembled moons blocked the sword of misfortune. Clang! There was a loud bang and sparks flew. The shadowless emperor shuddered and spat out blood. His dermic treasures, the curved sabers, in his hands were sent flying by the sword of misfortune. His reaction was slower to begin with, and he could not unleash his strength to its limits. Furthermore, he had just fought against Su Zimo and had expended a lot of blood chi, decreasing his combat strength significantly. Under such circumstances, the shadowless emperor was severely injured after receiving a direct attack from the god race emperor. The sword of misfortune sent the dermic treasures, the curved sabers, flying, and the gigantic sword slashed towards the shadowless emperor with a black glow. The shadowless emperor relied on the terrifying movement technique of the Rakshasa race to retreat with all his might. However, a gigantic gash appeared on his chest from the pitch-black sword beam of the sword of misfortune. That slash nearly sliced the shadowless emperor into 2. The shadowless emperor had a horrified expression as he glared at the old man from the god race with a conflicted expression: anger, confusion, and doubt. He could not understand. He did not have time to think about such things either. The old man from the god race strode towards him with the sword of misfortune in his hands. Instant transmission! Without hesitation, the shadowless emperor released his supreme divine power. Chapter 1732 Prison. Chapter 1732 Prison. Right now, the shadowless emperor was surrounded by the god race army, and there were 3 emperors of the god race who had yet to attack. If he wanted to escape, he could only use instant transference. However, when the shadowless emperor channeled his essence spirit, the supreme divine power dissipated before it was formed. The shadowless emperor's figure swayed and his face turned pale. He had failed. The supreme divine power he released had failed. The moment instant transference was about to be released, a dark power shrouded the shadowless emperor's essence spirit. That power did not cause much damage to his essence spirit. However, it isolated his connection with his supreme divine power, causing instant transference to fail. What happened? What is that? The shadowless emperor was shocked when he checked the dark power that was attached to his essence spirit. This change had truly shocked him. Suddenly, the shadowless emperor felt a sharp pain in his chest. Instinctively, he looked down. The wound on his chest did not show any signs of stopping. On the contrary, the blood flowing out of his wound had already turned black. The flesh on both sides of the wound had already turned pitch black. Furthermore, the black power was still spreading through his entire body through the wound. It's that sword! The shadowless emperor's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly thought of an answer. You want to escape after being injured by the sword of misfortune? Right then, the old man from the god race had already arrived behind the shadowless emperor and sliced the latter into 2. Blood and organs splattered all over the ground. The shadowless emperor's essence spirit was entangled by the power of misfortune and could not escape from his consciousness. It was killed by a single sword strike. The top emperor of the Rakshasa race was killed by 2 sword strikes from the old man of the god race. In reality, if the shadowless emperor was in his peak condition, he might not have died in the battle against the old man of the god race. However, his combat strength was less than half of his peak after the battle with Su Zimo. Furthermore, he had not expected the god race to attack him. Coupled with the fact that he underestimated the power of the sword of misfortune, that was the reason for his death. All the living beings of the 10,000 races were stunned when they saw that. The expressions of the storyteller, Long Ran, and the others turned extremely terrible. Although they did not fight the old man from the god race, they could tell that his combat strength was definitely not weaker than the Hell Witch Emperor and the others. Furthermore, the fact that the god race killed the Shadowless Emperor without hesitation was a clear indication of their stance. The god race might start a massacre in Tianhuang mainland. It was useless even if they submitted. All right. Good kill. The many god race beings of Tianhuang mainland were naturally invigorated and excited. They had endured enough humiliation after being abandoned by the 10,000 races of Tianhuang mainland all these years. Today, it was finally their turn to feel proud. At that moment, the Hell Witch Emperor had already returned to the Witch race's ancestral ground. Looking at everything from afar, the Hell Witch Emperor sneered and murmured, "God's mainland? Fufu, when the time comes, I'll make sure all of you stay in Tianhuang mainland. From now on, Tianhuang mainland will belong to the Witch race." With that said, the Hell Witch Emperor entered a valley in the Witch race's ancestral ground in a flash. There were hundreds of thousands of witches waiting for his orders. Suddenly, cracks appeared in midair above the middle continent. The 3 god race emperors above the Dragon Bone Valley took advantage of the chaos to escape. They tore through the void and descended here. Some god race patriarchs sped over excitedly as well. "Greetings, God Emperor!" The 3 god race emperors were covered in injuries and looked wretched. When they passed through the god race army and arrived before the god emperor, they knelt down. "Your Majesty, you're finally here! We've waited for this day for way too long! Your Majesty, please give the order. We'll sweep through the 10,000 races with the god race army and conquer Tianhuang mainland completely," the 3 god race emperors shouted. The god emperor on the divine throne remained motionless and silent. The 3 god race emperors shouted for a long time but gradually calmed down when they received no response. "Your Majesty, what's wrong?" a god race emperor said carefully. "Right now, the 10,000 races of Tianhuang mainland are fighting and countless experts of the 10,000 races have died. This is the best opportunity." "That's right," another god race emperor added hurriedly. "Right now, the only threat in Tianhuang mainland is the martial emperor of the human race. As long as we kill the martial emperor, Tianhuang mainland will no longer be a threat." "Martial emperor, martial emperor," the god emperor on the throne suddenly murmured. "That's right, the martial emperor." When the god race emperor below heard the reply, he was invigorated and said hurriedly, "The martial emperor's Dao title is Desolate Martial and he has 2 true bodies. However, the 2 true bodies have expended a lot of energy after this battle." The god emperor raised his hands slowly. The god race emperor stopped hurriedly. For some reason, every single move of the god emperor possessed an unstoppable might. Although he was an emperor, he did not dare to offend the god emperor. "Tie them up," the god emperor said indifferently. "Understood." The 4 god race emperors beside the divine throne nodded slightly and walked towards the 3 god race emperors of Tianhuang mainland. "Your Majesty, what are you doing?" "We're trying to help you and our god race." The 3 god race emperors of Tianhuang mainland were agitated and wanted to resist. The expression of the old man from the god race with the sword of misfortune darkened as he said coldly, "How dare you go against the will of the god emperor? Do you have a death wish?" The moment he said that, the 3 god race emperors of Tianhuang mainland were scared out of their wits. Cling! Clang! The storage rings on the fingers of the old man from the god race flashed, and he withdrew a gigantic chain that shone with a golden light. Both ends of the chain were sharp hooks. Once it pierced flesh, it would be locked tightly. The 3 god race emperors of Tianhuang mainland were scared out of their wits and shivered, but they did not dare to resist. They could only let the old man of the god race wrap the chain around them tightly. The hooks at the end of the chain pierced their flesh and fresh blood flowed. The 3 emperors trembled in pain, but they could only grit their teeth and remain silent. The storyteller, Long Ran, and the others were puzzled, not understanding what the god emperor was plotting. Su Zimo frowned slightly in deep thought. Some god race patriarchs sped over from the borders of the north region. When they arrived and saw that, they were stunned on the spot with bewildered expressions. Your Majesty, what about them? The old lady from the god race with the staff of dawn bowed slightly and asked softly. Tie these patriarchs up as well. The god emperor said indifferently. All god race beings beneath the level of patriarchs are to be locked in the god race prison. No one shall be spared. Understood. The god race army agreed readily. The next moment, the god race army charged forward and the patriarchs of Tianhuang mainland were locked by chains, unable to move at all. When the god race army arrived at the border of the north region, they did not attack any living beings of Tianhuang mainland or injure anyone by mistake. On the contrary, they captured all the god race beings of Tianhuang mainland, regardless of their cultivation realms, and locked them in a gigantic cage. Chapter 1733 Young Master, It's Me. Chapter 1733 Young Master, It's Me. Before long, the god race beings of Tianhuang mainland were imprisoned by God's mainland. The living beings of Tianhuang mainland were puzzled. Mystic Emperor, what's going on? Longran frowned and asked. Are the people of God's mainland crazy? Or are they plotting something? A mist appeared in the storyteller's eyes as he extended his finger and divined rapidly. However, there was still no result after a while. The storyteller shook his head. That god emperor is shrouded by a layer of obscure divine light that seems to originate from that crown and throne. I can't divine anything at all. Pausing for a moment, he continued. However, there doesn't seem to be much hostility from God's mainland. Su Zimo looked at the god emperor on the throne thoughtfully. He had a guess in his heart, but it was way too bold that he could not confirm it. Before long, the god emperor arrived not far away from Su Zimo under the protection of many god race beings. The god emperor stood up slowly from his throne. Su Zimo's gaze shifted. The god emperor had shoulder-length golden hair and was tall with a voluptuous figure. He wore a white robe that was divine and elegant, revealing his perfect figure. It was a woman. Unfortunately, she was not the person Su Zimo had guessed. More than 1,000 years ago, when Yanqi found out about the truth of the primordial war in the Kunlun ruins, she felt guilty and did not know how to face Su Zimo or Night Spirit. As such, she leaped into the Rainbow Cave and headed to God's mainland. There had been no news of her all these years. When Su Zimo saw that God's mainland did not seem to have much hostility towards Tianhuang mainland, a bold thought even flashed through his mind. The god empress of God's mainland might be Nianqi. However, Su Zimo shook his head the moment he saw the god empress stand up. Although her appearance could not be seen, he knew Nianqi too well after she had followed him for so long. Nianqi possessed the bloodline of the god race and had always looked like a young girl. Even after more than 1,000 years, she would not have changed so much. It was not only the change in her figure, even her aura was vastly different. Nianqi was usually very obedient by Su Zimo's side. However, the god empress before him had a powerful aura. Although she had a devilish figure, she seemed incomparably divine and could not be ignored. The god empress stood up and looked at Su Zimo in silence. Su Zimo frowned slightly in confusion. A moment later, the god empress left her throne and walked slowly towards Su Zimo. The 4 emperors of the god race followed closely, and many god race beings opened up a path. The 2 of them were less than 10 feet apart. The god empress raised her hand and said softly, "You guys can stay here." The 4 god race emperors exchanged glances and stopped in their tracks. Su Zimo's ears twitched. The voice was familiar but also foreign. The god empress walked towards Su Zimo alone. Su Zimo could not sense any hostility from the god empress. Even so, he did not dare to lower his guard. At that moment, Su Zimo was not the only one. In Tianhuang mainland, even some experts who were fighting at the intersection of the north region stopped and looked over. The living beings of the 10,000 races were filled with countless questions. Everyone was curious what would happen when the Martial Emperor and the God Empress, 2 peak experts of their respective mainlands, met for the first time, Before long, the God Empress arrived before Suzimo. The two of them were less than an arm apart. For emperors, that distance was extremely close and dangerous. However, Suzimo did not retreat and merely looked at the approaching God Empress quietly with an inquiring and confused gaze. The two emperors stood opposite one another. Immediately after, in front of everyone, the God Empress bowed down to the martial emperor. Ah! An uproar broke out all over Tianhuang mainland. The living beings of the 10,000 races widened their eyes and their jaws almost dropped to the ground. God Empress! God Empress, you can't! The 4 God race emperors of God's mainland exclaimed emotionally. Nianqi? Suzimo looked at the God Empress who was bowing in front of him and tried his best to suppress the excitement in his heart as he asked softly. Young master, it's me. The God Empress raised her head and her spirit consciousness moved. The power of the crown dissipated, revealing an almost perfect face that stunned the world. Suzimo was stunned on the spot. Although her appearance was somewhat different, there were still distinct traces of Nianqi in the past. Nianqi had grown up. The only thing that did not change was her eyes that were as blue as the sea. Her eyes were filled with endless longing, dependence, excitement, and tenderness. A realization flashed through Suzimo's mind. It was no wonder why he found that voice familiar and foreign. That was because after Nianqi grew up, she underwent a voice change that caused such a change. That girl? When the storyteller saw Nianqi, he was slightly lost but reacted quickly. In a daze, he fell into a distant memory and lamented. A long time ago, when he first met Suzimo in the capital of Great Zhou in the North region, there was a girl as such following him. At that time, he could tell that there was some bloodline of the god race in this girl's body. However, it was extremely obscure. He did not think too much about it. She was merely a remnant of the god race. All these years, Nianqi had been by Suzimo's side. Although her cultivation had not fallen behind, she had not revealed any sharpness either. However, who would have thought that the girl from back then would have already become the God Empress of God's mainland? Nianqi, it's really you! Suzimo smiled happily. In his excitement, he hurried forward and held Nianqi's shoulders, helping her up. How dare you! The old man from the god race wielding the sword of misfortune widened his eyes and took a step forward. Blowing his beard, he glared at Suzimo and shouted with a furious expression. The body of the God Empress is divine and flawless. How can you touch it casually? Back down! Don't be rude! Nianqi glanced sideways and frowned slightly, hollering softly. The old man from the god race was a little indignant, but he did not dare to resist and could only retreat angrily. Nianqi, how did you? Suzimo had countless questions in his mind as well. It's a long story. Nianqi smiled with an imperceptible hint of bitterness in her eyes. Suddenly, Suzimo felt a sense of pity and heartache. He did not continue asking. However, he could imagine that Nianqi had definitely experienced countless grievances, difficulties and dangers alone in God's mainland. As a remnant of the God race with an impure bloodline, Nianqi managed to ascend to the position of the God Empress step by step. What sort of suffering did she have to endure in between? Up till this point of his cultivation, Suzimo still had the gifts left behind by Dai Yu as well as Ethereal Peak, Patriarch Yuan Bei, the Red-Headed Ghost, Extreme Fire, Lin Xuanji and other sect mates by his side. In God's mainland, Nianqi was alone and had no one to rely on. Chapter 1734 Redemption. Chapter 1734 Redemption. Suzimo had never believed in any innate bloodline. Although the primordial 9 races were born with powerful bloodlines, their future accomplishments might not be above the human race. He, Suzimo, was the most ordinary mortal and did not even have a spirit root. Right now, he had reached the peak of Tianhuang mainland and was conferred the title of the Martial Emperor, respected by all races. 40,000 years ago, Dao Lord Blood Fiend and Monk Daming were only abandoned descendants of the primordial races. Their final achievements were even stronger than the primordial races with pure bloodlines. It was the same for Nianqi. Su Zimo believed that Nianqi must have experienced countless things in God's mainland in the past 1,000 years. In fact, it might even be more exciting than when he was in Tianhuang mainland. Those experiences were the reason why she was the current God Empress. Nianqi, why are you here at this time? Su Zimo asked again. Nianqi smiled gently. In the civilization of God's mainland, there's a divination technique similar to some divination techniques of Enigma Palace that can predict things. In my divination, there's a huge change in Tianhuang mainland. I'm guessing that there's a high chance that a huge battle broke out between the primordial races and the human race. That's why I brought my clansmen here to help you suppress the primordial races. With that said, Nianqi suddenly declared, all God race beings, listen up! Join forces with the human cultivators of Tianhuang mainland to suppress the Witch, Blood Vine, Heavenly Eye, Rakshasa and Golden Crow races. Understood! Many God race riders agreed in unison. The God race army was activated and their iron hooves rumbled as they charged towards the battlefield at the intersection of the North region. The only ones left standing behind Nianqi were the 4 God race emperors with the divine judgment weapons. The 4 God race emperors looked at Su Zimo with wary and hostile gazes. They had no feelings for Su Zimo. All they knew was that it was truly inappropriate for Nianqi to bow to the martial emperor despite being the God Empress of God's mainland. No matter what, the status of the God Empress should be equivalent to the martial emperor at the very least. However, at that moment, when Nianqi returned to Su Zimo's side, the aura of the God Empress had long vanished, as though she had returned to the past. From her tone, brows and every single move she made, it was clear how much Nianqi relied on Su Zimo. The 4 emperors of the God race frowned. Su Zimo turned around as well and looked at the North region battlefield. His voice was cold as he said slowly, the Golden Crow Fire Emperor, Shadowless Emperor, Thousand Eye Emperor and Blood Emperor have been executed. Living beings of the 5 primordial races and 8 demon regions, listen up! We won't kill anyone who surrenders. If you insist on resisting, we'll kill you without mercy. Su Zimo had no intention of killing them all. On the one hand, both parties suffered immense losses in this battle. If they continued fighting, it would be a disaster for the 10,000 races of Tianhuang mainland. On the other hand, he was worried about another huge latent danger. In the North region battlefield, the primordial 5 races showed signs of defeat after the emperors of the primordial 5 races died one after another. Right now, the God race army had joined the battlefield. When Su Zimo said that, the allied army of the primordial 5 races collapsed instantly. The living beings of the 8 demon regions lowered their heads. The experts of the primordial races had already given up on resisting and either submitted or fled for their lives. The emperors of the human race finally heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that. After this battle, the primordial 5 races would be completely silent, and it would be difficult for them to do anything throughout history. In midair, Nianqi lowered her head slightly and said softly, Young master, I'm sorry. Why? Su Zimo was puzzled and asked instinctively. Nianqi pointed to the many God race beings imprisoned behind her. They're from the God race after all. As the God Empress, it's not easy for me to kill them all just like that. That's nothing. Su Zimo shook his head. Even if the human race won this battle, he had no intention of killing them all. By suppressing 3 God race emperors of Tianhuang mainland without hesitation earlier on, Nianqi had already been accountable to the living beings of the 10,000 races who died in this battle. Young master, there's somewhere else I want to go. After a moment of silence, Nianqi suddenly said, Let's go. I'll accompany you. Although Nianqi did not say it explicitly, Su Zimo had already guessed it. The 2 of them sped towards the west with the 4 emperors of the God race following closely behind. Before long, the 6 of them arrived above the Kunlun ruins. The 4 God race emperors summoned their divine judgment weapons and circulated their blood qi, channeling the power of their weapons to carve out a spacious passage in the Kunlun ruins. A divine power storm would not be formed in this passage. The 6 of them advanced and arrived at the gods' slaying valley before long. On both sides of the god-slaying valley stood two tall, ferocious corpses with torrential auras. Even after dying for countless years, the two corpses still emitted a shuddering aura and rumbling might. The two divine house of the primordial era. Arriving at the god-slaying valley, Nianqi knelt down before the two divine house. God Empress, why are you? When the old man from the god race saw that, he hurried forward, wanting to help Nianqi up. However, Nianqi glared at him. Those blue eyes were filled with tenderness when they looked at Su Zimo earlier on. However, at that moment, Nianqi's eyes were filled with killing intent and authority. The old man's heart skipped a beat and he shuddered, remaining silent. Nianqi said softly, Seniors, the god race committed a huge mistake back then and caused you two to die here, suffering eternal grievances. Today, the descendants of the god race have arrived. Please forgive us, seniors. With that said, Nianqi knelt and kowtowed to the two divine house. Again and again. Each time she kowtowed, Nianqi's eyes were filled with endless guilt. Nianqi, get up. Su Zimo could not bear it and said softly, This is a crime committed by the ancestors of the god race in the past. It has nothing to do with you. You shouldn't have to endure this. Nianqi did not reply and continued kowtowing. Unknowingly, Night Spirit had arrived beside Su Zimo. Back then, after knowing the truth of the primordial war, although Night Spirit had never said it, there was indeed an unresolvable knot in his heart towards Nianqi. Nianqi could sense it. That was the reason why she left Tianhuang mainland and Su Zimo without hesitation to head to God's mainland alone. Apart from wanting to help Su Zimo, another important reason for Nianqi's return was to atone for the god race's sins. Before long, Nianqi's forehead bled. A long time later, she raised her head and looked at the corpses of the two divine house, saying in a deep voice, I swear in the name of the God Empress that as long as I'm alive, none of our clansmen on God's mainland shall ever invade Tianhuang mainland. If this vow is broken, I shall be smitten by the heavens. Boom! 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 The moment she said that, the corpses of the divine house on both sides of the god-slaying valley shattered and began to collapse, turning into countless spots of light that scattered in midair. The spots of light gradually formed two taboo divine house. The two divine house looked at Night Spirit deeply and growled at Nianqi before turning to leave with one another, disappearing before everyone. Night Spirit knelt down silently with tears in his eyes. Su Zimo sighed with a sorrowful expression. The two divine house of the primordial era were concerned about Tianhuang mainland. Even though they died, they carried endless obsessions, and that was the reason why their corpses were standing here with their backs facing Tianhuang mainland. Nianqi's vow made the two divine house finally let go of their obsession and leave this world completely. Nianqi received forgiveness. The god race received redemption. The divine house received liberation. At that moment, the feud of the primordial era finally became the past and was fully resolved. Chapter 1735 Arrival of the Black Witch. Chapter 1735 Arrival of the Black Witch. The battle triggered by the primordial five races was almost over. The living beings of the 8 demon regions lowered their heads. Countless experts of the primordial five races were injured or dead as well and were completely defeated. Of the 5 top emperors of the primordial races, the Hell Witch Emperor was the only one who escaped back to the Witch race's ancestral ground. The Dragon Phoenix true body chased all the way, prepared to kill this latent danger completely. The Witch race's ancestral ground was sinister everywhere, and many of the buildings were made of white bones and corpses. It was extremely terrifying. Around the Witch race's ancestral ground was a dark green river that was extremely sticky and bubbled. From time to time, a skull would float up from the green river and stare at the Dragon Phoenix true body in midair with its pitch-black eyes, as though it was sentient. After the Dragon Phoenix true body descended, he had already sensed that there was some sort of cursed power in the Witch race's ancestral ground that restricted the essence spirit immensely. Even his spirit consciousness could not envelop the entire Witch race's ancestral ground and could not scan the territory in full. The Dragon Phoenix true body sensed and murmured, There's actually an array formation here. To think that there would be experts in the witch race who are proficient in array formations. He pondered for a moment, and sensed the flaw of the formation. Refine! The dragon phoenix true body's gaze intensified, and he suddenly opened his mouth, spewing out a stream of scarlet lava that poured towards the dark green river around the ancestral ground. Splash! Splash! The scorching lava fused with the sticky green river and let out a series of strange sounds as green smoke billowed. Although the dragon phoenix flame had not reached the realm of a supreme divine power, as the innate flame of a taboo, its power was unusually terrifying. A series of tragic cries even sounded from the green river. The next moment, ghastly figures appeared one after another above the green river. They floated and were dense, countless. The river had devoured the souls of countless living beings. The source of power for the formation of the witch race was this green river. After the witch race killed the living beings of the 10,000 races, they would use a secret skill to capture their souls and throw them into the river. They would fall into eternal damnation, never to be reincarnated. The flames of the dragon phoenix true body finally freed the souls. The dragon phoenix true body had a cold expression, and the flames he spat out intensified, enveloping the entire green river before long. Raging flames burned on the river. Before long, the power of the curse in the green river was burned to ashes by the dragon phoenix true body. The formation of the witch race's ancestral ground was dispelled as well. Without any restrictions, the spirit consciousness of the dragon phoenix true body was released and enveloped the entire ancestral ground of the witch race instantly. The dragon phoenix true body frowned slightly. The massive ancestral ground of the witch race was extremely empty. Even under the envelopment of his spirit consciousness, he could not see anyone from the witch race. However, in the depths of the witch race's ancestral ground, there was a valley that even the spirit consciousness of the dragon phoenix true body could not probe. Without hesitation, the dragon phoenix true body flapped his wings and sped towards the valley. Before long, the dragon phoenix true body descended in the valley. True enough! All the witches were gathered in the valley, and there were at least 100,000 of them. Of course, those witches had different cultivation realms as well. Looking down from midair, one could clearly see that the ground of the valley was filled with gigantic ravines. The ravines were formed from white bones and formed rings. Hundreds of thousands of witches stood on the ravine rings. Within the rings, there were an additional 8 ravines that bypassed them, cutting through to the center of the valley. It was a sacrificial platform of white bones. A person stood on the sacrificial platform. It was the Hell Witch Emperor who had escaped from the Dragon Bone Valley. Apart from the Hell Witch Emperor, there were 4 emperors of the witch race standing around the white bone sacrificial platform. However, the 4 emperors of the witch race were old. The Hell Witch Emperor stood in the middle of the white bone sacrificial platform and waved his bone staff. With the 4 emperors of the witch race assisting him, he was executing some secret skill of the witch race. The dragon phoenix true body's gaze froze and his heart skipped a beat. Hundreds of thousands of witches had already cut their wrists, with the bloodline of the witch race flowing through them. The bloodline of the witch race flowed slowly along the 8 ravines to the white bone sacrificial platform. The Hell Witch Emperor chanted an obscure incantation. Under the guidance of his bone staff, the bloodlines of the witch race formed a dark green blood ball above the valley. The dark green blood ball surged continuously and sinister runes were formed on its surface, emitting an extremely terrifying energy fluctuation. The dragon phoenix true body had never seen such methods before. However, he realized that he could not let the Hell Witch Emperor release that secret skill. Swoosh! The dragon phoenix true body flashed and charged towards the Hell Witch Emperor in the middle of the white bones sacrificial platform at a shocking speed. Rise! It was clear that the Hell Witch Emperor had seen the dragon phoenix true body as well. However, he did not panic at all. Instead, a mocking look flashed through his eyes as he hollered softly. Buzz! The circles of white bones around the white bones sacrificial platform suddenly burst forth with dark green light that landed on the dragon phoenix true body. Boom! There was a loud bang. The dragon phoenix true body was sent flying by the beams of light, and his scales rotted and fell off. The power released by the sacrificial platform was extremely strong, and the dragon phoenix true body's organs were shaken violently from the collision. Hee hee hee! The Hell Witch Emperor laughed with a deranged expression. Desolate Marshal, that doesn't feel good, right? The worst is yet to come. It's too late for you to stop me. You and every single living being of Tianhuang mainland, prepare to be enslaved by the witch race. The Hell Witch Emperor had a menacing expression and laughed wildly. In the end, he was already hysterical. As the Hell Witch Emperor spoke, the dark green ball of light in midair intensified and the runes on it shone brighter. Black Witch, please descend upon Tianhuang mainland and subdue the 10,000 races. The Hell Witch Emperor raised his head and glared at the dark green ball of light in midair, roaring. Black Witch, please descend and subdue the 10,000 races. More than 10 witches shouted at the same time. Sacrifice! The Hell Witch Emperor hollered. Immediately after, his body exploded into a blood mist that was devoured by the dark green ball of light in midair. The dragon phoenix true body had a grim expression. The Hell Witch Emperor was dead. In order to release the secret skill of the witch race, the Hell Witch Emperor even sacrificed his life. Who was the Black Witch that the Hell Witch Emperor was referring to? Could it be? The dragon phoenix true body suddenly thought of a terrifying possibility, and looked up instinctively. Boom! In midair, the dark green ball of light suddenly exploded and a terrifying power swept through the entire firmaments. Even the clouds were dyed dark green. The power smashed towards a crack in the firmaments that shone with a blinding light. That was the crack left behind by the human emperor's descent 1,000 years ago. Chapter 1736 Annihilation. Chapter 1736 Annihilation. 1,000 years ago, the storyteller used a secret skill to bring the eternal human emperor down, and nearly exhausted his lifespan. Right now, this secret skill was clearly similar to the storyteller's secret skill. Furthermore, the secret skill of the witch race was even more intense. Not only was the life of a top emperor like the Hell Witch Emperor sacrificed, it was activated with the bloodlines of 4 witch race emperors and hundreds of thousands of witches. An expert of the witch race from the upper world was about to descend upon Tianhuang mainland. However, Su Zimo had no way of stopping everything. This is bad. When the storyteller saw that, his heart skipped a beat. Long Ran had a grim expression as well. I wonder how strong will the expert of the upper world summoned by the witch race be? However, no matter what, any expert that descends from the upper world will have to pay a heavy price. Not necessarily. The storyteller sighed with a worried expression. As the palace guardian of the human emperor's palace, he naturally knew that the current Tianhuang mainland had imperfections in heaven and earth with chaotic laws. After 1,000 years, the laws of this world might not even affect the experts of the upper world. If that was the case, the consequences would be unimaginable. The living beings of the 10,000 races of Tianhuang mainland were probably doomed. Back then, the eternal human emperor's cultivation realm fell continuously and he was severely injured, leaving only his essence spirit. With the help of Su Zimo's green lotus true body, he could even kill top emperors such as the heavenly god emperor. If an expert of the witch race could descend from the upper world without any changes to his cultivation realm, nobody would be able to defend against his attacks. Boom! Boom! A loud bang sounded from the skies. Suddenly, a dark green beam of light descended from the crack in the firmaments, and smashed heavily onto the ground of the middle continent. The ground shook and the mountains trembled. Countless living beings turned into ashes on the spot against the dark green beam of light. Immediately after, right in front of the living beings of the 10,000 races, 7 figures descended slowly. The 7 figures wore strange clothes. Unlike the witches of Tianhuang mainland, they looked even older. However, the 7 figures also had a pair of dark green eyes that looked extremely strange, like the eyes of a fiend. What was even more terrifying was that when the 7 figures descended with a tremendous might, the living beings of the 10,000 races felt a sense of danger. Even the emperors of Tianhuang mainland could not muster any resistance against that might, let alone ordinary cultivators. The dragon phoenix true body had a grim expression as he looked at the 7 figures. Are they the experts of the upper world? Which one is the Black Witch? Or is the Black Witch not referring to a single person, but something else? The 7 experts of the witch race of the upper world descended slowly, and the void around each of them collapsed continuously. This world could not withstand the power of the 7 witch race experts. What was even more terrifying was that the 7 witches from the upper world were not affected or impacted by any laws after arriving in Tianhuang mainland. What the eternal human emperor was worried about back then had finally happened. Heaven and earth had imperfections and the laws were incomplete. The Hell Witch Emperor summoned his secret skill and summoned experts of the witch race of the upper world who could descend without any drop in their cultivation realms. Among the 7 experts of the witch race of the upper world, an old man from the witch race murmured slowly. We're here. This mainland is a minor kiliocosm. Haha, the living beings in this minor kiliocosm are so weak. Another slightly younger witch grinned excitedly and released his spirit consciousness to patrol Tianhuang mainland brazenly. Elder Feng, is what you said true? Another witch woman asked. Are there truly rare treasures in this minor kiliocosm? That's for sure. The old man from the witch race of the upper world nodded. Although this minor kiliocosm is weak, it's still a world of its own. It's not impossible for treasures to exist here. The few witches from the upper world spoke casually without concealing their voices and intentions. They did not take the 10,000 races of Tianhuang mainland seriously at all. Or rather, in the eyes of the 7 witches of the upper world, all the living beings of Tianhuang mainland were ants. Even emperors were merely slightly stronger ants. Su Zimo was secretly alarmed. Elder Feng was not wrong. At the very least, the creation green lotus was a treasure from the upper world. The heaven-slaying sword art and earth-slaying sword art seemed to be from the upper world as well. That was only what Su Zimo knew. There might be more that he did not know. Elder Feng continued. If any treasures appear in the upper world, countless experts will definitely fight for them and cause a bloodbath. However, as long as we can descend in this lower world, we can take away all the treasures. There's no power in the lower world that can threaten us. But what treasures can there be in this lower world? Another young witch asked. The spirit chi in this minor kiliocosm is thin and is way too different from the heaven and earth essence chi in the upper world. Hee hee. Elder Feng laughed. Of course, there's no way a true treasure can be born in this lower world. However, there's a high chance for treasures of the upper world to fall into a lower world. Legend has it that the only creation green lotus in the world was lost in a lower world. Whoever obtains that creation green lotus and nurtures it to grade 12 will definitely soar. Even a lotus seed of the creation green lotus can increase one's lifespan countless times after being refined into a medicine. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. There's no hurry. The heaven and earth laws here are incomplete. We can still stay for a few more days. Elder Feng added. 1,000 years ago, the eternal human emperor descended and returned to the upper world not long after due to the restrictions of the laws. But now that the 7 witches had arrived in Tianhuang mainland, not only did their cultivation realms not decrease, they could even stay for a few days. Did something happen to the witch race such that they had to alarm us? Elder Feng's gaze shifted to the ancestral ground of the witch race as he said slowly. Although his voice was neither loud nor soft, it was filled with authority and spread to every corner of Tianhuang mainland. The 4 emperors of the witch race rushed over hurriedly and knelt down. With respectful expressions, they said in a deep voice, The witch race is in danger of being annihilated. Black witches, please kill our great enemy. Oh? Elder Feng raised his brows slightly. Even in the upper world, our witch race is considered as a powerful race. To think that we would be at risk of being annihilated in this minor kiliocosm? What sort of a great enemy would dare to try and annihilate the witch race? Suddenly, Elder Feng's voice turned deep and cold with a chilling intent. It's a taboo dragon phoenix. An emperor of the witch race turned around hurriedly and pointed at the dragon phoenix true body above the witch race's ancestral ground, shouting, "That's him!" "Oh?" A dark glint flashed through Elder Feng's eyes as he said in surprise, "To think that such a demon beast would be born in this minor kiliocosm. How rare. Apart from the dragon phoenix, there's also a taboo divine Ho. Another Hell Witch Emperor continued. By the way, the creation green lotus you mentioned earlier on is one of the dragon phoenix's true bodies." At the mention of the creation green lotus, the eyes of Elder Feng and the other three witches shone brightly. Chapter 1737 Only Way Out. Chapter 1737 Only Way Out. Creation green lotus! Elder Feng extended his palm and grabbed the witch elder through the void, asking sternly, "Were you talking about the creation green lotus?" Why, yes." The voice of the emperor of the witch race trembled. He was completely helpless against Elder Feng's palm. "Where's the creation green lotus?" Elder Feng tried his best to suppress his emotions and asked in a deep voice, "What's up with the true body you mentioned earlier on? Hurry and tell me the truth." "The Dragon Phoenix's Dao title is Desolate Martial, and he's the Martial Emperor of Tianhuang Mainland. He's almost the strongest person. The Martial Emperor has another true body. I heard that by some freak coincidence, he fused with the creation Green Lotus and became the Green Lotus true body," the Emperor of the Witch race said hurriedly. "Cloning technique?" Another witch of the upper world frowned slightly. "He fused his flesh with the creation Green Lotus to create a humanoid creation Green Lotus." The Emperor of the Witch race nodded repeatedly. "That's right. Furthermore, the Green Lotus true body of the Martial Emperor has already grown to the peak of grade 8 and is extremely strong. His body can take on dermic treasures. Peak grade 8. Elder Feng's eyes lit up when he heard that. "Ha ha!" He could not help but burst into laughter. The wrinkles on his face were stacked together as he shouted, "The heavens are truly on my side! This is supreme fortune! Congratulations, Elder Feng!" The 6 young witches at the side congratulated hurriedly with envy in their eyes. Who wouldn't be tempted by a treasure like the creation Green Lotus? Elder Feng said excitedly, "If I can obtain the creation Green Lotus, my lifespan will be extended and I'll definitely be able to advance through that most critical step." "Congratulations!" The 4 emperors of the witch race echoed hurriedly. "Where's the humanoid creation Green Lotus?" Elder Feng asked hurriedly. "This?" The 4 emperors of the witch race exchanged glances and shook their heads. They had been setting up sacrificial methods in the witch race's ancestral ground and did not know that the Green Lotus true body, Nian Qi and the others were in the Kunlun ruins. Standing together with Nian Qi and the other god race beings, Su Zimo did not circulate his blood qi, and the experts of the witch race of the upper world naturally did not notice him. "You guys don't know?" Elder Feng frowned. "That creation Green Lotus is a true body of the taboo dragon phoenix. As long as we capture him, we'll be able to know the location of the Green Lotus true body." An emperor of the witch race pointed at the dragon phoenix true body and said hurriedly, "Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh." The gazes of the 7 experts of the witch race from the upper world landed on the dragon phoenix true body. Although they were millions of kilometers apart, those gazes seemed to be able to penetrate countless voids and landed on him, piercing him with a dull pain. The dragon phoenix true body stood in midair, and his blood qi surged. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the 7 experts of the witch race of the upper world without retreating. It was not that he did not want to retreat. It was because there was no way out. "Hee hee!" Elder Feng laughed and suddenly extended his palm, facing the dragon phoenix true body from 1,000,000 kilometers away. Suddenly, the space around the dragon phoenix true body collapsed and a gigantic dark green palm appeared in the void, gripping his body tightly. 6-tusk divine strength! The dragon phoenix true body released a supreme divine power right away. 6 jade-white divine elephant tusks protruded from his back slowly, and his body was filled with an extremely domineering power as his blood qi surged. The dragon phoenix true body had already channeled the power in his body to its limits. Even so, he could not break free from that dark green palm. His strength seemed so insignificant against that palm. It was like an ant trying to shake a tree. Right in front of the living beings of the 10,000 races, the taboo dragon phoenix that was almost at the peak of Tianhuang mainland was grabbed by a dark green hand and yanked towards Elder Feng. The difference was too great. It was worlds apart. Kunlun ruins. Su Zimo's expression turned extremely terrible. That power was not something they could fight against. Back when the eternal human emperor descended, his cultivation realm fell and he was only left with a severely injured essence spirit. At that time, the emperors of the primordial races could still fight him. But now that the 7 witches of the upper world had descended and their cultivation realms were unchanged, the dragon phoenix true body was helpless against this unknown power of the upper world. This was an unsolvable trap. There was still no news from the martial Dao prime body. Even if the martial Dao prime body could sense something and came forth from seclusion, he had no chance of winning against that power. The difference was like a mortal facing an emperor of Tianhuang mainland. Night Spirit moved and wanted to tear through space to help the dragon phoenix true body. "Don't go!" Su Zimo stopped him hurriedly. Even if Night Spirit went over, he would only be sending himself to death. "Your Majesty, let's hurry and leave!" The old man from the god race whispered. "It's too dangerous here. We can't linger." The other 3 god race emperors nodded as well. Thankfully, Nianqi paid her respects to the divine host corpses and they arrived at the Kunlun ruins as well. They were extremely close to the Rainbow Cave and could reach the latter in the blink of an eye to escape from this place back to God's mainland. If they were still in the Middle Continent or North region, they might not even get the chance to leave. "Young master, leave with me before they notice you!" With a worried expression, Nianqi sent a voice transmission to Su Zimo secretly. "Follow me to God's mainland! The laws of God's mainland are perfect, and these witches of the upper world can't barge in either. Young master, that's our only way out." Su Zimo pursed his lips tightly and remained silent, merely looking at the dragon phoenix true body from afar. Nianqi knew Su Zimo's intentions and continued. "Young master, I know that you can't bear it. However, the dragon phoenix true body has been captured and can no longer be saved. You can only abandon it. If you stay here, this green lotus true body will be captured by them sooner or later. At that time, both true bodies will fall into their hands. Young master, stop hesitating and follow me," Nianqi urged anxiously. How could Su Zimo not know that his only way out was to head to God's mainland? However, the dragon phoenix true body was not merely a true body to him. That true body carried everything about Daiyu. To him, it was a form of mental sustenance. Furthermore, the descent of the 7 upper world witches would definitely cause a catastrophe for the living beings of Tianhuang mainland. Countless humans would die in this catastrophe. The storyteller, Little Fanny, Lin Xuanji, Monkey and his other brothers, Ethereal Peak, the 9 immortal sects, 7 fiend sects, 6 Buddhist monasteries. All his old friends and everything else would probably turn into ashes and ruins. As the martial emperor and the human emperor of this generation, Su Zimo had once established the martial Dao and imparted martial arts to all living beings. How could he make such a choice to abandon everyone and leave alone? Nianqi, leave first. I'll be there in a while. After a brief pause, Su Zimo continued. Night Spirit, leave this place with Nianqi as well. Young master! Nianqi called softly but did not leave. She could also guess that Su Zimo had no intention of leaving, and that was the reason why he wanted her and Night Spirit to leave first. I'm not leaving, Night Spirit said slowly. The Divine Ho race was born to protect Tianhuang mainland. Furthermore, his brothers were all here. Chapter 1738 Massacre of Emperors. Chapter 1738 Massacre of Emperors. Above the Dragon Bone Valley, the emperors of the human, dragon, Kun and barbarian races watched helplessly as the dragon phoenix true body was captured by the witch race from the upper world. The taboo dragon phoenix comprehended 2 supreme divine powers and could even kill emperors of the human race who comprehended 6 supreme divine powers. However, in the hands of this expert of the upper world's witch race, the taboo dragon phoenix was helpless. Even if they swarmed forward, it would be useless. What should we do? Long Ran was anxious and turned to look at the storyteller, asking, "Can you think of a way to get the eternal human emperor to descend?" 1,000 years ago, the human emperor descended and was severely injured. All these years, even in the human emperor's palace, I did not manage to contact the human emperor. The storyteller shook his head and sighed. The witch race can summon experts of the upper world. Do the dragon, barbarian, and Kuan races have any means of doing so? An emperor of the human race could not help but ask. The emperors of the primordial races shook their heads. Long Ran sighed as well. Among the primordial races, the witch race is probably the only one who possesses such a secret skill. Doesn't that mean that we can only watch helplessly as the taboo dragon phoenix dies? Monk Kong Yun had a pained expression. That's not all. The storyteller had a grim expression. The dragon phoenix isn't the only one. The other experts of our human race and the primordial races won't be able to escape death either. That's right. Long Ran nodded. Although we're emperors, in the eyes of these experts of the upper world, we're like ants and our lives are worthless. Swoosh. Right then, an emperor of the Rakshasa race realized that the situation was bad as well. In a flash, he flapped his wings and sped towards the extreme west. Experts of other levels might have a chance of surviving. However, if the experts of the witch race of the upper world wanted the witch race to rule over Tianhuang mainland, they would have to kill all the emperors of the other races. The emperors of the other primordial races clearly realized this as well. After the Rakshasa emperor fled, the remaining emperors of the Golden Crow, Heavenly Eye, and Blood Vine races fled one after another. The emperors also realized that the Rainbow Cave in the Kunlun ruins was their only shot at survival. Elder Foam pulled the dragon phoenix true body over from the void thousands of kilometers away. When he saw that, he smirked with a mocking expression and said indifferently, "Go on, let these ants of the lower world witness the power of the upper world." All right. The other 6 witches of the upper world were already eager and impatient. The 6 witches of the upper world moved one after another. A young witch's figure flashed at an astonishing speed. In just a few breaths, he caught up to the Rakshasa emperor, who was the first to escape. The Rakshasa race was the fastest. As for the witch race, their physiques and bloodlines were ordinary, and their movement techniques were extremely average as well. Even so, the young witch of the upper world caught up to the Rakshasa emperor in a few breaths. "Where are you going?" The young witch of the upper world smiled gently and suddenly opened his mouth, spitting out a dark green stream of air in the direction of the Rakshasa emperor. When the stream of air landed on the Rakshasa emperor, his figure froze in midair. Right after, right in front of the living beings of the 10,000 races, the body of the Rakshasa emperor rotted rapidly with green bubbles. In the blink of an eye, he was corroded into a sticky green liquid that splattered down. Dead? An emperor of the Rakshasa race was killed by a single breath of air from the witch race of the upper world. The other emperors of the primordial races that were escaping were scared out of their wits when they saw that. When they cultivated to the emperor realm, they were already the strongest existences in Tianhuang mainland. They had never felt such fear. An emperor of the Heavenly Eye race was shocked, and was about to continue escaping when a woman of the witch race appeared not far away. This woman was also from the upper world. The emperor of the Heavenly Eye race looked at the woman from the witch race of the upper world. The eyes of the witch race woman from the upper world shone with a strange dark green glow. Not good! The emperor of the Heavenly Eye race was alarmed. Without hesitation, he opened his Heavenly Eye and prepared to release the secret skill of the Heavenly Eye race. However, the moment his Heavenly Eye opened, his eyeball exploded. Ah! The emperor of the Heavenly Eye race shrieked. Before long, the tragic cries stopped. The emperor of the Heavenly Eye race's head was tilted and he fell from midair. There was no longer any life in his body. Dead? In fact, even till his death, he did not know how he died. In the eyes of others, the Emperor of the Heavenly Eye race died after exchanging a single glance with the witch race woman from the upper world. Was that the power of the upper world? The storyteller and the others widened their eyes in shock. That power had completely surpassed their understanding. Before an emperor of the blood-vine race could escape far, a green spark appeared on his body almost imperceptibly. However, the spark burned the emperor of the blood-vine race into ashes rapidly. The entire process took less than 3 breaths. The emperor of the blood-vine race was dead. Tisk, tsk, tsk! A sinister laughter sounded from the firmaments. It was a witch of the upper world who circled around an emperor of the Golden Crow race in a flash. No matter which direction the emperor of the Golden Crow race fled, the witch of the upper world would step in and stop him. Where are you trying to escape to? The witch of the upper world teased the emperor of the Golden Crow race like a cat playing with a mouse and asked with a smile. You can't escape. Give up! The witch of the upper world laughed endlessly with a mocking expression. Kill! When the emperor of the Golden Crow race saw that he could not escape, his blood surged and he forgot about life and death as he charged towards the witch of the upper world. The witch race of the upper world stood on the spot without dodging or using any methods. Right in front of everyone, an emperor of the Golden Crow race collided heavily against the witch of the upper world. The third leg of the Golden Crow Emperor even grabbed the head of the witch of the upper world. The witch race had a weak physique and bloodline. Although the 3D Golden Crow's physique and bloodline were not as strong as the dragon and god race, they were not to be underestimated. The third leg of the Golden Crow race was even sharper and tough, able to penetrate everything. Perhaps that might be enough for him to kill this witch of the upper world? The storyteller and the other emperors held their breaths. Tisk, tsk, tsk! The laughter of the witch of the upper world sounded as he said coldly, I've already said that you should give up. The emperor of the Golden Crow race was shocked. His third leg landed on the head of the witch of the upper world, and the sound of metal clashing could even be heard. His sharp claws could not even pierce the flesh and skin of the witch of the upper world. The difference was too great. A look of despair flashed through the eyes of the Golden Crow Emperor. I don't want to play with you anymore. Boring. The witch of the upper world muttered and extended his palm casually, slapping the Golden Crow Emperor. Poof! The Golden Crow Emperor was smashed into a blood mist without a corpse left and died. Chapter 1739 Divine Powers Fight. Chapter 1739 Divine Powers Fight. The greatest weakness of the witch race was their weak physique and ordinary bloodline. But now, the witch of the upper world killed an emperor of the Golden Crow race with the methods they were the least skilled in. It was as simple as crushing an ant. This power! The storyteller's face was pale as he murmured. Even the taboo dragon phoenix might not be able to withstand such a palm strike. To think that ascending to the upper world would bring about such a huge transformation. The emperors of the human race were shocked as well. In that short period of time, the dragon phoenix true body was already caught by Elder Fong. The dragon phoenix true body had a calm expression without any fluctuation or fear in his eyes. He had witnessed everything that happened earlier on. Furthermore, the dragon phoenix true body realized that even if he had a taboo bloodline and body, he would definitely not be able to defend against the power of the witch race of the upper world. However, he had no intention of surrendering. Even if he had to die, he had to drag a witch of the upper world with him. The other 6 witches were chasing after the other emperors of the primordial races and had yet to return to Elder Feng's side. This was the best opportunity. Tisk, tsk, tsk! Elder Feng sized up the dragon phoenix true body brazenly. The dragon phoenix true body was gigantic and was covered in scarlet scales that burned with raging flames. Even in front of Elder Feng, his aura did not diminish. Seems like you're still unconvinced. Elder Feng smiled gently. Keep your appearance in front of me. The moment he said that, the dark green hand that grabbed the dragon phoenix true body suddenly tightened and released an extremely terrifying power. The dragon phoenix true body grunted. Buzz! Buzz! Green smoke billowed. The dragon phoenix flames on his body were extinguished instantly. The two pairs of wings on his back were crushed by the gigantic palm and fresh blood flowed. Under the pressure of the dark green hand, the dragon phoenix true body shrank continuously and returned to his human form before long. Speak! Elder Feng looked at the dragon phoenix true body and asked indifferently. Where's your green lotus true body? I can tell you, but can you let this true body of mine go? The dragon phoenix true body suddenly said. The reason why he said that was to numb Elder Feng and make the latter lower his guard. No problem. A mocking look flashed through the depths of Elder Feng's eyes, and he even released the dark green hand on the dragon phoenix true body. Speak! Elder Feng smiled gently. Old dog, die! An extremely cold killing intent burst forth from the calm eyes of the dragon phoenix true body. Reverse scale! The dragon phoenix true body released the essence spirit secret skill without hesitation. Of course, an essence spirit secret skill alone could not threaten experts of the upper world. The moment the reverse scale was summoned, the dragon phoenix true body channeled his essence spirit wildly and condensed a supreme divine power. The dragon phoenix true body extended his finger and pointed at Elder Feng from afar, shouting softly. Fleeting moment! An extremely terrifying power enveloped Elder Feng without any traces or substance. Be it with the naked eye or spirit consciousness, no one could see the form of that power. This was the power of time. Time had no form to begin with. The dragon phoenix true body heard everything Elder Feng said clearly. Elder Feng had once said that if he could obtain the creation green lotus, his lifespan would increase. This meant that Elder Feng definitely did not have much lifespan left. The release of fleeting moment was definitely a destructive power for Elder Feng. When the dragon phoenix true body released his essence spirit secret skill, the reverse scale, Elder Feng still had a calm expression, and the mockery in his eyes intensified. Elder Feng only frowned slightly when fleeting moment descended. He sensed it and frowned. It's the power of time! As expected of the dragon phoenix bloodline. To think that you can already comprehend the power of the time in the lower world. Furthermore, this seems to be a supreme divine power. At that moment, the dragon phoenix true body had a grim expression. Elder Feng was way too calm. Although Elder Feng was moved when he saw fleeting moment, he did not panic or fear at all, as though he did not take his supreme divine power seriously at all. Foo-foo. Elder Feng laughed. Dragon Phoenix, although your bloodline is not bad, you're nothing but a frog in a well in the lower world. Today, I'll let you witness what a true divine power is. Before his sentence was finished, Elder Feng chanted an incantation and an extremely pure and rich power burst forth from his body. That power was incomparably strong and fused with the incantation, releasing an extremely terrifying divine power. Elder Feng pointed forward and hollered softly. Frost Curse! Frost Curse? The dragon phoenix true body was stunned when he heard that incantation. Above the Dragonbone Valley, the emperors of the human race, the storyteller, Long Ran and the others were stunned and puzzled. The Frost Curse was the most ordinary lesser divine power of the witch race. Elder Feng had actually released a lesser divine power to defend against the supreme divine power, fleeting moment. Before the confusion in everyone's hearts dissipated, they saw an extremely shocking scene. The reverse scale that floated out from the glabella of the dragon phoenix true body was covered by a layer of frost before it even arrived before Elder Feng. Crack! 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 In the blink of an eye, cracks appeared on the reverse scale. Bang! The next moment, the reverse scale shattered into nothingness. Crack! 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 Immediately after, an even more intense sound came from around Elder Feng. Cracks appeared densely in the void around Elder Feng. Time was invisible. However, the Frost Curse froze the power of time in the void, and it could not descend. Many emperors were stunned and dumbfounded. The dragon phoenix true body was shocked and confused as well. His supreme divine power was completely suppressed by Elder Feng's lesser divine power. How could this be? Although the Dragon Phoenix true body did not know about curses, Elder Feng's incantation of the Frost Curse was no different from the Frost Curse chanted by the emperors of the witch race in Tianhuang mainland. The only difference was that when Elder Feng condensed the lesser divine power, an extremely pure and rich power burst forth from his body. It was this power that fused with the Frost Curse that caused the lesser divine power to transform completely. In fact, it even froze Fleeting Moment into ice. Is this the power of the upper world? A look of disappointment flashed through the eyes of the Dragon Phoenix true body. Even after using all his trump cards, he could not injure Elder Feng at all. The difference was way too great. He had no chance of winning at all. Hee hee! Right then, the other 6 witches of the upper world returned one after another, and sneered when they saw that. This ant from the lower world wants to go against us. He's a frog in the well without much knowledge. Elder Feng, in my opinion, we should just capture his essence spirit and use the soul-searching art. Why waste our breath on him? Chapter 1740 Hattered Light Ball. Chapter 1740 Shattered Light Ball. Elder Feng looked at the Dragon Phoenix true body with a mocking expression. Little beast, let me tell you. Although the divine power you've comprehended is not bad, you can only unleash 1/10 of its power. The true power of divine powers comes from the upper world, Elder Feng said proudly. Even if you ants from the lower world have comprehended supreme divine powers, you won't be able to withstand a single blow against us. The Dragon Phoenix true body remained silent. When Fleeting Moment and the reverse scale were dispelled by a single lesser divine power of the other party, he had already realized that the difference between them was not something that a few supreme divine powers could make up for. Even if he comprehended 3, 4 or even 10 supreme divine powers, it would be useless, let alone the 2 supreme divine powers he had comprehended right now. This was the insurmountable gap between the lower and upper worlds. That was the reason why the billion minor kiliacosms had heaven and earth laws to prevent experts of the upper world from descending. That was because once experts of the upper world descended, living beings of the lower world would not be able to stop them. At that time, the billion minor kiliacosms would only be filled with killing, bloodshed and enslavement. The power of an expert of the upper world could even destroy a minor kiliacosm. In a sense, the heaven and earth laws were not only meant to protect the living beings of the lower worlds, but also the billion minor kiliacosms themselves. Little beast, my patience is limited. Tell me the location of the green lotus true body. Don't force me to search your soul, Elder Feng said faintly. There was a high chance that the soul-searching art would fail. That was the reason why Elder Feng did not attack immediately. Otherwise, how could the Dragon Phoenix true body have lasted till now? Old dog! Suddenly, the Dragon Phoenix true body smiled with a mocking expression. I don't care if you destroy this true body of mine. However, remember that even if my Dragon Phoenix true body is destroyed, I won't die. When my other true body ascends to the upper world, I'll definitely look for you. I'll make you pay 100 times over. Little beast, how dare you threaten me? Elder Feng's expression darkened completely as he reached out with a cold gaze towards the head of the Dragon Phoenix true body. Get the hell out! He hollered, and his palm descended with an extremely domineering power. Under that power, the Dragon Phoenix true body could not move at all. He could only watch helplessly as Elder Feng's palm landed on his head. Crack! The sound of bones cracking could be heard by the Dragon Phoenix true body. The next moment, immense pains surged into his mind. The Dragon Phoenix true body could no longer cry out. That was because Elder Feng had already crushed his head into pieces with his bare hands. Boiling blood splattered everywhere. Above the Dragon Bone Valley, the emperors of the human race, Long Ran and the others watched everything with blank expressions. Against that power, there was only despair in everyone's eyes. Even the human emperor's seal might not be able to shatter the body of a taboo dragon phoenix that had comprehended 2 supreme divine powers. But now, this old man from the witch race of the upper world crushed the head of the Dragon Phoenix true body with a single palm. It was an extremely violent and shocking scene. First, Monkey and the others stood at the borders of the north region with sorrowful expressions. A flawless white-robed woman sighed gently when she saw that Kunlun ruins. Nianxi turned her head away and could no longer bear to look. Night's spirit growled deeply and shuddered slightly. He glared coldly at the 7 figures standing proudly in the firmaments with a cold, killing intent in his eyes. Nobody could stop the experts of the witch race from the upper world. Under Elderfang's palm, the head of the dragon phoenix true body shattered, revealing the consciousness within. In his consciousness, the 11 demon kings roared furiously. However, they were shattered by the power in Elderfang's palm. Against that immense power, the blazing ball of light surrounding the dragon phoenix essence spirit shattered as well. There was a scarlet flame in the ball of light. The dragon phoenix essence spirit looked at the ball of flames in a daze. The final ball of light finally shattered. He had looked forward to the scene of the ball of light shattering countless times. However, he had not expected this situation today. The ball of flames contained the final divine power. The ball of flames contained the final demon king as well. Comprehending that divine power meant that he had cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness to its perfected stage. However, it was useless. Even if he comprehended that divine power, he could not defend against the experts of the witch race of the upper world. The difference in strength between them was way too great. Furthermore, Elderphone would not give him the chance to comprehend the final divine power. The dragon phoenix essence spirit felt its vision darken. Elderfang's palm had already descended. When his essence spirit was captured, there was only a single outcome left. Regardless of whether the soul-searching art succeeded, he would die eventually. It's a pity that I couldn't cultivate the final divine power or perfect the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. The dragon phoenix true body sighed internally. However, before long, a ruthless and decisive look flashed through the eyes of the dragon phoenix essence spirit. Su Zimo had never feared death. Furthermore, even if the dragon phoenix true body was destroyed, he was not truly dead. However, he would not allow himself to be soul-searched by others. That was an insult to him. He would definitely not allow anyone to obtain information about the Green Lotus true body, or anything about the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness from his memories. Old dog, if you want to search my soul, do it in your next life. The dragon phoenix essence spirit let out a final roar and an extremely terrifying power burst forth from it. He's going to self-destruct his essence spirit. Hurry and stop him. A few experts of the witch race from the upper world shouted when they sensed the fluctuation. Dark green power extended from Elderfang's palm hurriedly and coiled towards the dragon phoenix essence spirit, wanting to stop it from self-destructing. However, it was too late. Boom! There was a loud bang. Right in front of the living beings of the 10,000 races, the dragon phoenix essence spirit exploded and dissipated on the spot, turning into nothingness. The self-destruction of his essence spirit created a massive spirit consciousness fluctuation that even caused cracks to appear in the surrounding void. The living beings of the 10,000 races were silent with sorrowful expressions. Nobody expected the dragon phoenix true body to choose such a decisive and tragic method to fight against the experts of the witch race of the upper world. His essence spirit self-destructed and his soul was shattered. It could not even reincarnate. Even if they knew that they were going to die, not many people would dare to self-destruct their essence spirits to destroy themselves. Damn it! Elderphone was enraged. The fact that he did not obtain the location of the Green Lotus true body was secondary. More importantly, the resistance of the dragon phoenix true body made him feel provoked. He's just an ant of the lower world. Even if he has a taboo bloodline, he's only a little beast. How dare he go against my will? Elderfang's expression was cold as his gigantic palm enveloped down. He grabbed the remnant body of the dragon phoenix true body and suddenly gripped it. The body of the dragon phoenix true body was crushed by Elderfang's palm and turned into a blood mist without a corpse. Chapter 1741 Nirvana. Chapter 1741 Nirvana. Even if you self-destruct your essence spirit, I'll burn your body into ashes, Elder Feng said hatefully. After crushing the remnant body of the dragon phoenix true body, he swiped his hands and a blood mist filled the skies. The life force was destroyed and everything turned into dust. This was truly turning into ashes. Not a single drop of blood of the taboo dragon phoenix remained in this world. Kunlun ruins. Su Zimo watched everything quietly in silence. The destruction of a true body was nothing to him. His only regret was that he could not cultivate the final divine power and the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness to its perfected state. Young master, are you alright? Worried about Su Zimo, Nianqi asked softly. I'm fine. Su Zimo shook his head gently and murmured. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to see what the final demon king was. In the final sight of the dragon phoenix true body, the ball of light shattered and only a ball of flames appeared. However, his essence spirit self-destructed before he even had the chance to see what demon king was within the ball of flames. Suddenly, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and his expression changed. What's wrong? Nianqi asked. Su Zimo frowned slightly with a strange expression. He merely shook his head and focused his gaze towards the place where the dragon phoenix true body died. Under normal circumstances, if the dragon phoenix true body's essence spirit self-destructed and his body was destroyed, he would definitely be dead. It was impossible for him to have any connection to the dragon phoenix true body. However, the strange thing was that when Su Zimo calmed down, he could still sense a trace of the dragon phoenix true body from afar. However, it was extremely faint and imperceptible. Could the dragon phoenix true body not be still alive? Even Su Zimo was shocked at the thought of that possibility. The living beings of the 10,000 races witnessed how the dragon phoenix essence spirit protected itself, and its soul was shattered. Its body was crushed by elder foam. How could it still be alive? Just as Su Zimo's imagination was running wild, the connection between him and the dragon phoenix true body became increasingly obvious. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he looked into the distance. Above the firmaments, Elder Feng's expression darkened. Although he crushed the bones of the taboo dragon phoenix and turned it into ashes, it was still unable to appease the hatred in his heart. Is there any other way to obtain the location of the creation green lotus? Elder Feng turned to look at the 4 emperors of the witch race of Tianhuang mainland and asked coldly. An emperor of the witch race hurried forward and said, Senior Black Witch, Desolate Marshal has many good friends on this mainland. As long as we capture them, we'll definitely be able to find the location of the green lotus true body. The emperor of the witch race did not conceal his voice, and the storyteller, Long Ran, and the other cultivators heard him clearly. Damn it! Lin Xuanji's heart sank as he cursed. When the emperor of the witch race said that, it was clear that he wanted to slash the guillotine towards them. Where are they? Elder Feng asked. Indeed, the emperor of the witch race pointed to the Dragon Bone Valley rapidly and said in a deep voice. The emperors of the human race, the dragon, Kun and barbarian races over there are all good friends of Desolate Marshal. If we can't get anything out of them, there are also some people who are close to Desolate Marshal. Another emperor of the witch race pointed in the direction of the North region's border. Don't worry, Senior Black Witch. None of these people can escape. All right. Elder Feng nodded slowly and said expressionlessly, Let's ask these ants from the lower world first. I don't believe that we won't be able to find the creation green lotus. The 4 emperors of the witch race straightened their backs and looked at the storyteller and the other emperors above the Dragon Bone Valley. With proud expressions, they declared, Mystic Emperor, this is Karma. 1,000 years ago, when you summoned the eternal human emperor, did you think about this day? The storyteller was silent. He had no choice given the situation 1,000 years ago. If not for the descent of the human emperor, the human race would have been defeated and might not even have been able to survive till this day. However, if the eternal human emperor had not descended upon Tianhuang mainland and destroyed it, causing heaven and earth imperfections with incomplete laws, these experts of the witch race from the upper world would not have descended today either. Furthermore, The cultivation realms of the witch race of the upper world did not decrease, and they even possessed the power of the upper world. "Capture those ants and interrogate them one by one," Elder Feng said indifferently. "Understood." The other 6 witches of the upper world agreed and were about to attack. Suddenly, a strange fluctuation came from the void at the side. Elder Feng and the others turned to look. In the void not far away, a wisp of flame the size of a fingertip floated. It was scarlet and erratic, as though a gust of wind could extinguish it. A flame that could condense in the void without dissipating was definitely extraordinary. "The aura of that flame seems familiar." Elder Feng frowned slightly in deep thought. "It's that ball of light." Suddenly, Elder Feng recalled something. When he crushed the body of the taboo dragon phoenix earlier on, he crushed a ball of light as well. A ball of flames floated in the ball of light, and its aura was identical to the one before him. "Interesting?" Suddenly, Elder Feng laughed. "The body of the taboo dragon phoenix turned into ashes under my palm, but the flames did not extinguish?" In that short period of time, the ball of flames grew larger. Initially, it was only the size of a fingertip. Before long, it turned into the size of a fist and burned furiously, turning into a gigantic fireball that resembled a blazing sun. The living beings of the 10,000 races widened their eyes in confusion. "Divine powers?" An upper world witch suddenly said softly. There was a powerful divine power within the gigantic fireball. "It's a supreme divine power," Elder Feng said slowly. The moment he said that, a tremendous life force burst forth from the fireball and blood chi surged, almost spewing out. "Roar!" A roar that sounded like a dragon and phoenix's cry echoed from the fireball and reverberated through the world, shocking the 10,000 races. That was the roar of the taboo dragon phoenix. "Heavens! The taboo dragon phoenix isn't dead! How is that possible? His essence spirit was destroyed alongside his body. How is he not dead?" Exclamations sounded from all over Tianhuang mainland. The 10,000 races were in an uproar. "I got it." In the Kunlun ruins, Su Zimo murmured softly, seemingly enlightened. "What's going on?" Nianqi could not help but ask in surprise and joy. Su Zimo said, "After the 4th ball of light shattered, that final divine power was the Nirvana divine power. Legend has it that the undying divine phoenix had a powerful ability, Nirvana rebirth. However, in reality, every single Nirvana rebirth was extremely dangerous for the divine phoenix. That was because there was a 90% chance of failure and only 10% of success. Therefore, even the divine phoenix would not use its Nirvana technique unless it was absolutely necessary. Of course, if it could succeed in its Nirvana rebirth, the combat strength of the undying divine phoenix would increase immensely. In the final ball of light, the final demon king born from the flames was the undying divine phoenix. However, there was still no joy in Su Zimo's eyes. Even if he succeeded in his Nirvana and was reborn from the flames, the 3rd supreme divine power comprehended by the dragon phoenix true body was still weak against Elder Feng. He would just die another time, that's all. Chapter 1742 Who are you calling a little beast? Chapter 1742 Who are you calling a little beast? It's the Nirvana divine power! Elder Feng narrowed his eyes when he sensed the energy fluctuation spreading from the flames. To think that this dragon phoenix truly has many trump cards. Another witch of the upper world was surprised as well. Elder Feng smiled faintly. As a supreme divine power, the Nirvana divine power is powerful indeed. One can be reborn from the flames and it's equivalent to breaking the laws of life and death. However, the restrictions of the Nirvana divine power are extremely great and the chances of success are extremely low. Even the divine phoenix race of the upper world would not dare to use the Nirvana divine power casually. The witch woman at the side said, I heard that after a successful Nirvana rebirth through flames, one's combat strength will increase significantly. So? Elder Feng smiled. That little beast will merely undergo another baptism of divine powers. No matter how much his combat strength rises, he won't be able to cross the gap between us. That's right. Another witch of the upper world laughed as well. Now that the dragon phoenix has revived, Elder Fong can release the soul-searching art once more. This time round, it's impossible for him to self-destruct his essence spirit, Elder Fong said faintly. Raging flames surged in the void. The dragon phoenix true body was born from the flames and gradually regained consciousness. He also understood what happened to him. The power of the Nirvana divine power baptized his flesh and essence spirit continuously. The dragon phoenix true body could clearly sense his power rising rapidly. His body was bathed in flames and became even tougher and unshakable. His bloodline was purified by the Nirvana flames. His essence spirit became increasingly condensed as flames coiled around it like dozens of fire dragons. Standing in the flames, he seemed to be burned through from the inside out, emitting a scarlet glow that filled the skies. Back then, he was encircled by 3 emperors of the primordial races like the Hell Witch Emperor. This time round, even if there were 5 top emperors of the primordial races, the dragon phoenix true body would be able to kill them all. However, the dragon phoenix true body still had a grim expression as he looked at the 7 witches of the upper world not far away through the raging flames. That was because even if he comprehended the Nirvana divine power, and his combat strength increased, this change was still not enough to deal with the experts of the witch race of the upper world. Su Zimo sighed internally. Actually, the moment the dragon phoenix true body was reborn and regained consciousness, he realized Dai Yu's good intentions. Although Dai Yu had left, she was still worried about him. In fact, she left him 3 gifts, although he still did not know what the 3rd gift was up till now. However, the first 2 gifts, the Siraka flower and divine phoenix bone, were way too helpful for his cultivation path. The reason why he was able to cultivate was because the Siraka flower had replaced the function of the spirit root. It was also because of the Siraka flower that he was able to be reborn as a golden core at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. In fact, Dai Yu was worried that he would not be able to withstand the blow, and even left a few words in the old temple at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. As for the divine phoenix bone, it had saved his life countless times. In the end, he even made use of the bloodline of the divine phoenix bone to fuse with the bloodline of the dragon race, turning it into a taboo of the 10,000 races, the dragon phoenix. Finally, Dai Yu even left the Nirvana divine power for him to inherit. This was equivalent to giving him another life. What did it mean to alter one's fate? He was an example of one. With the help of the Nirvana divine power, Su Zimo could be reborn from the flames and his combat strength would increase greatly. There was a high chance that he could kill his enemies instead. Under normal circumstances, that was indeed the case. Even if the dragon phoenix true body did not comprehend fleeting moment, and was killed on the spot in the battle against the top emperors of the primordial races, he would have a chance to attempt Nirvana rebirth. At that time, he would still be able to kill the Hell Witch Emperor and the others. Su Zimo smiled bitterly. Dai Yu had predicted almost everything. However, she was not omniscient and omnipotent. Even Dai Yu would not have expected that Su Zimo's opponent today was not from Tianhuang mainland, but from the upper world. It was a strong foe that Su Zimo could not match at all. Above the firmaments, the dragon phoenix true body suddenly took a deep breath. The blazing flames around him transformed into streaks of fire that surged into his nose and mouth, fusing with his body and bloodline. The dragon phoenix true body had been reborn. This should have been an extremely exciting matter. However, be it the emperors of the human race or the living beings of the 10,000 races, all of them had grim expressions. Everywhere in Tianhuang mainland was shrouded by a layer of sadness, and the atmosphere was tense. Anyone with eyes could tell that even if the dragon phoenix true body was reborn, nothing would change. He would just be killed mercilessly once more. You've revived, that's good. Elder Fong nodded with a smile and did not waste his breath on the dragon phoenix true body. He released his terrifying spirit consciousness and locked the latter's consciousness completely. This time round, the dragon phoenix essence spirit did not even have the chance to self-destruct. As he approached, Elder Feng reached out and grabbed the Dragon Phoenix True body. Before the palm descended, the void around the Dragon Phoenix True body had already collapsed. Suddenly, the blood chi in the Dragon Phoenix True body seemed to have sensed a tremendous stimulation and circulated on its own. It burst forth with the sound of a tsunami, and his blood chi rose rapidly, reaching its limits. Rich blood chi spread and terrifying demon beasts with massive bodies were rapidly formed around the Dragon Phoenix True body. Wild Bovine Demon King, Stone Bear Demon King, Anaconda Demon King, Sanguine Ape Demon King, Divine Steed Demon King, Hell Tiger Demon King, Wind Leopard Demon King, Desolate Ocean Dragon King, Sea Calming Turtle, Golden Rock, Six-Tusked Divine Elephant, Undying Divine Phoenix. The 12 Demon Kings of the mystic classic of the 12 Demon Kings of the Great Wilderness appeared in a lifelike manner. Their gazes were frightening and they emitted an extremely terrifying aura. The bloodline phenomenon of the Dragon Phoenix True body. The scene of the 12 Demon Kings protecting the Dragon Phoenix True body in the middle was extremely shocking. However, the emperors of the human race could not bear it and sighed. To everyone, this was merely the final struggle of the Dragon Phoenix True body. The Dragon Phoenix True body looked at the 12 Demon Kings around him in a daze with a lost expression. He did not will the bloodline phenomenon this time round. Instead, it circulated on its own and appeared. Humph! Elder Feng hollered softly. The struggles of a cornered beast. Shatter! He merely exerted strength in his palm and the 12 Demon Kings were crushed, turning into scarlet demonic chi once more. Elder Feng's palm continued closing. The scarlet demonic chi was still surging and changing without dissipating. In the blink of an eye, all the demonic chi formed a butterfly in front of Su Zimo. The butterfly was less than 10 feet tall and spread its blood-colored wings with 2 moons etched on them. It was like a pair of cold eyes that were staring at Elder Feng. Suddenly, Elder Feng felt uneasy and inexplicably frustrated. That feeling displeased him. Little beast, you haven't given up! Elder Feng's gaze was ruthless as he sneered. Watch me cripple your phenomenon! Who are you calling a little beast? Suddenly, a cold voice sounded in midair. It was a woman's voice, neither loud nor soft. Others were puzzled as to who the voice was. However, Su Zimo was shocked when he heard that voice. He looked at the blood-colored butterfly in disbelief and his body trembled uncontrollably. Although many years had passed, he was extremely familiar with that voice. Chapter 1743 Third Gift. Chapter 1743 Third Gift. Who is speaking? It seems to be beside the taboo Dragon Phoenix. That butterfly? It spoke in human tongue? The emperors of the human race discussed softly in shock. The Dragon Phoenix True body looked at the blood-colored butterfly in front of him, and his breathing turned heavier unconsciously. He merely tried his best to open his eyes without blinking. He was afraid that this was just a hallucination of his. He was afraid that the butterfly would vanish the moment he blinked his eyes. Prior to this, the blood butterfly had also condensed many times. However, this time round, the blood butterfly was clearly different. It seems like the blood butterfly is speaking? A witch of the upper world frowned slightly. A bloodline phenomenon is actually sentient? For some reason, Elder Feng felt increasingly frustrated and uneasy. His expression darkened as he said coldly, No matter what it is, shatter it! A dark green light shone brightly in Elder Feng's eyes and an extremely powerful force burst forth from his palm, crushing towards the blood-colored butterfly. This time round, Elder Feng did not hold back and even enveloped the Dragon Phoenix True body. He did not want to search Su Zimo's soul anymore. He merely wanted to kill the uneasiness in his heart as soon as possible. The blood-colored butterfly seemed motionless. However, her wings trembled slightly. The vibration of that tremble was extremely small and could not be seen with the naked eye. It was also shockingly fast, and in the eyes of others, it was almost motionless. However, after that slight tremble, A terrifying energy fluctuation burst forth from the void. The surrounding void collapsed instantly. Poof! Immediately after, blood spewed everywhere in the firmaments. Right in front of the living beings of the 10,000 races, Elder Feng's outstretched palm shattered into a blood mist. That was not all. That terrifying power was still spreading along Elder Feng's palm towards his arm rapidly. In the blink of an eye, half of Elder Feng's arm shattered into countless blood foam that splattered down. Ah! Elder Feng shrieked and retracted his palm hurriedly. His reaction was extremely fast, as well as he swiped his storage bag with his other hand and summoned a white-boned saber. Gritting his teeth, he slashed down on his arm. Elder Feng took advantage of the energy fluctuation and severed his arm before it could spread to his body. Blood gushed out like a fountain. A mere arm injury was nothing for Elder Feng. However, the pain seeped into his bones. Elder Feng took 2 steps back and channeled his essence spirit, causing his severed arm to regrow rapidly. However, his expression turned extremely terrible. Initially, he thought that no one and no power in the lower world could hurt him. To think that he would suffer such an impact. The 6 witches of the upper world at the side had just reacted as well. Nobody expected Elder Feng to be injured. An uproar broke out all over Tianhuang mainland. What's going on? Long Ran clenched his fists and said in a deep voice. Could there be a way out? It's possible. The storyteller pondered deeply and said, Desolate Marshal was originally a mortal without a spirit root. However, his fate was changed by an expert, and he entered the cultivation world. Even I can't compare to the methods of this expert. Long Ran asked in surprise. You mean the blood-colored butterfly? Can this butterfly defend against the 7 witches of the upper world? Sigh, I don't know either. The storyteller shook his head. Above the firmaments, the 7 witches of the upper world summoned their weapons one after another. Some of them had white bone staffs and some of them had bone sabers and spears. Although they were of different shapes, every single weapon possessed a powerful aura. The moment those weapons were summoned, the surrounding void could not withstand the pressure and began to collapse. The 7 witches of the upper world had unfriendly expressions as they glared at the blood-colored butterfly not far away. What are you? Elder Feng narrowed his eyes and asked coldly. The blood butterfly did not reply and the surrounding space went into a trance. Right after, right in front of everyone, the blood butterfly transformed into a woman. She wore a blood-colored robe and her black hair fell like a waterfall. She had an indifferent expression and was extremely elegant. Looking at that familiar figure, Su Zimo was emotional and his eyes reddened. All the living beings of Tianhuang mainland raised their heads and looked at the blood-robed woman as well. For some reason, although this woman was extremely beautiful, she had a unique aura that was unforgettable after wearing the blood-colored robe. More importantly, the indifference and pride on the blood-robed woman's face made it seem as though she did not take anyone seriously. The moment the blood-robed woman appeared, the emperors of the human race and the experts of the world felt inferior instinctively. It's her! At the border of the north region, Monkey suddenly said. Brother Monkey, you know her? The spirit tiger, Ching Ching and the other siblings turned and asked curiously. We've met once, Monkey reminisced. However, that was many years ago. In Tsanglang mountain range, she suddenly looked for me and imparted to me a cultivation technique. Pausing for a moment, Monkey scratched his head and said in confusion. Even now, I don't understand why. That woman must be someone that young master can't forget, right? The little fox tilted her head slightly and pouted her pink lips, murmuring softly. Long Ran's heart skipped a beat and he exclaimed. So it's her! Back then, it was Dai Yu who descended upon the Dragon Burial Valley and snatched away the Soraka flower. Long Ran only realized who it was when the blood butterfly transformed into the blood-robed woman. It's that senior! Mo Ying of Divine Phoenix Island was excited when she saw the blood-robed woman. Back then, it was this blood-robed woman who descended upon Divine Phoenix Island and overwhelmed everything domineeringly to retrieve the Divine Phoenix bone. From that day on, Mo Ying idolized her wholeheartedly. The capital of Great Show. A woman in a pale yellow dress looked up at the skies with a conflicted, bitter and disappointed expression as she murmured, "So that's her?" above the firmaments. Su Zimo looked at the back of the blood-robed woman with an emotional expression. Finally, he could not help but call out softly, "And Miss Dai, is that you?" "Of course it's me." The blood-robed woman turned around and smiled at Su Zimo, who was not far away. Su Zimo was stunned. That voice had sounded in his ears countless times. That face had haunted him for a long time. Su Zimo had not expected that he would be reunited with Daiyu under such circumstances. In his heart, Su Zimo had countless things he wanted to tell Daiyu. He wanted to tell Daiyu everything that happened to him up till this point. However, the thousands of words he wanted to say became incoherent and stuttered. "Miss Dai, why? I never thought that you would." Su Zimo's expression was uneasy. At that moment, he no longer had the dominance and grace of the martial emperor and looked like a shy youth. Daiyu did not say anything and merely smiled at Su Zimo. "Miss Dai, thank you for the gift you left for me. The first 2 gifts have helped me a lot. However, I don't know if the third gift—" Su Zimo's mind was in a mess, and he did not know where to start. Right then, Daiyu spoke and interrupted Su Zimo. "The third gift is none other than me." Chapter 1744 Complete Annihilation. Chapter 1744 Complete Annihilation. When he heard that, Su Zimo felt his mind buzz and his heart thumped wildly, as though it was about to jump out of his mouth. He had never heard such touching words. Furthermore, it came from Daiyu. However, was Daiyu referring to her arrival to assist him, or was there any other meaning behind it? Su Zimo seemed to have thought of something as his face turned red and he was even more flustered. "What are you thinking about?" Daiyu looked at Su Zimo with a fake smile, as if she could read his mind. Su Zimo blushed even more. "And nothing," he replied hurriedly with an uneasy expression. For some reason, Su Zimo felt that Daiyu seemed to be smiling more as well upon their reunion this time round. Back when Daiyu imparted the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness to him in Pingyang town, she had a cold expression and barely smiled. Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo probed. "Miss Dai, what's the meaning of this third gift? Actually, even when I left back then, I did not expect that you would be able to cultivate to this point." Daiyu's expression turned emotional as well. She knew best how difficult it was for a mortal with an ordinary bloodline to rise in the cruel cultivation world without a sect, resources, or backing. When she left back then, she left behind the Saraka flower, divine phoenix bone, and the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. However, she also knew that the chances of Su Zimo growing were extremely slim. Although Su Zimo had once said that he wanted to look for her, she merely smiled and did not take it seriously. Therefore, now that Daiyu met Su Zimo again and saw that the latter had already cultivated to this stage, she was extremely delighted as well. As such, she naturally smiled more. Daiyu continued, "The mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Only when all 12 demon kings are cultivated and the blood butterfly is formed will I be able to sense it and descend upon this phenomenon with my consciousness." A look of realization flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. Prior to this, although the bloodline phenomenons he cultivated could also condense the blood butterfly phenomenon, they were all illusory. However, after the 12 demon kings were cultivated, the blood butterfly that was formed this time round had already materialized. In other words, he could only trigger the true blood butterfly phenomenon after cultivating the 12 demon kings. But the current you... Su Zimo looked at Daiyu and hesitated. After all, there were some things he could not say openly in the face of a great enemy. Daiyu did not hide anything and nodded without hesitation. "What you see now is naturally not my true body. At best, it can only be considered as a clone. In fact, it would be a stretch to call it a clone. Right now, Daiyu was merely a bloodline phenomenon conjured by Su Zimo. However, Daiyu's consciousness in it was awakened. At the side, Elder Feng and the other witches of the upper world did not dare to act rashly. When they heard that, the 7 witch race experts exchanged glances and heaved a sigh of relief. For them, they descended with their true bodies. However, the woman before them was merely a bloodline phenomenon, and could not even be considered as a clone. Fufu. The woman of the witch race from the upper world was jealous of Dai Yu's appearance and aura to begin with. Now that she knew about Dai Yu's background, she could not help but sneer. I was wondering what sort of a big shot this was. So you're nothing but a bloodline phenomenon. What are you acting cocky for? When she heard that, the smile on Dai Yu's face gradually disappeared. How dare a few black witches be noisy in front of me? Dai Yu turned around and looked at Elder Feng and the others. She said indifferently and attacked without hesitation. Without circulating any dermic arts or divine powers, Dai Yu merely extended her palm calmly. It was sparkling like jade and shone with a white luster as she slapped the woman from the witch race of the upper world. Die! The witch woman and the 2 witches of the upper world beside her attacked at the same time and released 3 lesser divine powers. Heaven Lock Curse! Extreme Curse! Zenith Curse! These lesser divine powers were not the same divine powers released by experts of Tianhuang mainland. The lesser divine powers of the experts of the upper world seemed to have transformed and could even suppress Su Zimo's supreme divine powers with ease. The 3 lesser divine powers were released at the same time as though they wanted to destroy the world. Poof! 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 However, the moment the 3 lesser divine powers were released, they were crushed by Dai Yu's palm and turned into nothingness without any ripples. The 3 lesser divine powers could not even defend against Dai Yu, let alone injure her. Dai Yu slapped down mercilessly and the bodies of the 3 witches from the upper world exploded instantly, turning into a blood mist. Before the essence spirits of the 3 upper world witch race experts could escape, they were slapped to death by Dai Yu's palm. Tianhuang mainland was shaken. The emperors of the human race and the living beings of the 10,000 races widened their eyes in disbelief. In their eyes, those invincible and unstoppable experts of the witch race from the upper world were as weak as ants against the palm of the blood-robed woman. She killed 3 of them with a single slap. It's way too strong! Long Ran was secretly speechless, and could not help but gulp. This is only a bloodline phenomenon. Just how strong is her true body? Su Zimo was not surprised at all. Demonis! Elder Feng was shocked and said in a deep voice, You'd better not go overboard. If you force me, I'll spread the news of what happened here to the witch world. If they know that there's a creation green lotus here, the ones that will descend at that time won't be experts of our black witch level. You were the one who called him a little beast earlier on. Dai Yu ignored Elder Feng's threat and shifted her gaze to him. Her eyes shone with a divine light. The void around Elder Feng collapsed instantly. The next moment, Elder Feng's body began to disintegrate as well, turning into blood foam. I'm going to destroy this mainland and create rivers of blood! Elder Feng's essence spirit let out a final tragic roar. His essence spirit burned and released some unknown secret skill, turning into a streak of light that shot into the clouds and entered the gigantic crack in the firmaments. You guys are finished! The remaining 3 witches of the upper world had pale expressions as they looked at Dai Yu, Su Zimo, and the others and laughed maniacally. The experts of our witch world will definitely arrive here after receiving the news. At that time, all of you and all the living beings on this mainland will have to die with Elder Feng. The 3 witches of the upper world roared with menacing expressions. Is that so? Dai Yu was nonchalant and unmoved. She said indifferently, You guys can go and die with him first. She slapped down. Poof! The remaining 3 witches of the upper world had already turned into 3 blood mists without corpses, and their essence spirits were destroyed. The world was silent. The living beings of the 10,000 races were shocked. The 7 witches of the upper world were extremely strong and arrogant. However, when the blood-robed woman descended, she killed all 7 witches of the upper world with ease, sparing no one. Chapter 1745 Take Revenge for You. Chapter 1745 Take Revenge for You. Dai killed 7 experts of the witch race from the upper world in succession. The 4 emperors of the witch race standing beside her were so scared that their faces turned pale and they shivered. Senior I. An emperor of the witch race had a terrified expression and his voice trembled, as though he wanted to explain something. Dai did not even look at them. With her back facing the 4 of them, she waved her red sleeves gently. The void collapsed and the world trembled. Boom! An extremely terrifying power struck the 4 emperors of the witch race, and their bodies exploded on the spot, turning into blood mists. Their essence spirits were destroyed on the spot as well. Although it had been many years since they last met, Dai was still as decisive and arrogant as before. The 4 emperors of the witch race were killed before they could even beg for mercy. It was useless even if an emperor begged for mercy. Dai could not be bothered to listen. With a wave of her sleeves, 4 emperors of the witch race died as though she was wiping away 4 specks of dust. Dai raised her head slightly and looked at the glowing crack in the firmaments. She murmured, "No wonder those black witches could arrive here safely." Su Zimo explained. 1,000 years ago, the human race met with a great calamity and someone used a secret skill to summon Senior Human Emperor who had ascended from Tianhuang mainland. When Senior Human Emperor received the news, he destroyed the world of Tianhuang mainland and descended forcefully despite his serious injuries to help the human race tide through that calamity. Before Senior Human Emperor left, he told me that because of his descent, the world of Tianhuang mainland is imperfect and its laws are incomplete. There might be other changes in the future. Oh? Dai sounded slightly surprised. However, her expression was calm. The human emperor is quite capable to be able to break through this world and withstand the laws of the lower world without dying. Su Zimo was secretly speechless. Senior Human Emperor was extremely domineering and suppressed the 10,000 races. He was invincible in the lower world and had ascended to the upper world for countless years. However, Dai merely mentioned that he was quite capable. Su Zimo smiled. At that time, I even asked Senior Human Emperor about you as well as the Great Wilderness. What did you find out? Dai's eyes shifted and ripples appeared like water as she asked with a smile. Su Zimo shook his head. Nothing much. I merely found out that there is a trichiliocosm and the Great Wilderness is merely a part of it. At the end of the day, because Senior Human Emperor was not someone from the Great Wilderness, he merely mentioned some things about it but he has never heard of you. Given his cultivation and methods, he's heard of the Great Wilderness but not me? Dai raised her eyebrows slightly. How did you ask him at that time? Su Zimo was slightly stunned. I merely asked Senior Human Emperor if he had heard of Dai. Why? Did I do something wrong? Dai. Dai seemed to have thought of something. She looked a little sad as she said softly, There are less than 5 people in the upper world who know the name Dai. Ah! A look of realization flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. Dai must have some sort of a Dao title in the upper world and the Great Wilderness. However, he asked the human emperor about Dai directly. It was only natural that he had not heard of her before. It was the same way in Tianhuang mainland. Although everyone knew of Desolate Marshal, not many people knew that his name was Su Zimo. Only those closest to him knew about this. There were less than 5 people who knew the name Dai. He was one of them. At that thought, Su Zimo suddenly felt a sense of warmth and pride. Dai said, If you have the chance to see him again, you can ask him again about the blood butterfly of the Great Wilderness. Su Zimo smiled. You'll have to wait for me to ascend to the upper world. Your current cultivation is enough if you want to ascend to the upper world. Dai looked at Su Zimo and nodded slightly with a hint of admiration. It is beyond my expectations that you can cultivate to this stage. It's all thanks to the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness, the Siraka flower and divine phoenix bone, Su Zimo said. If you hadn't arranged them for me, I would have died a long time ago, Miss Dai. Dai said. Although I left you 3 gifts in the past, how far you can go depends on your own efforts and destiny. In other words, if you hadn't been able to condense the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness in the end, you would not have seen me and I would not have bothered about you as well. That sentence was perfectly fitting of Dai Yu's style. It sounded cold and heartless. Dai Yu continued, "Something unexpected happened to you. The divine phoenix bone was left for you, but you fused it with the dragon bloodline and became a dragon phoenix." When he heard Dai Yu's words, Su Zimo seemed to have returned to the past where Dai Yu brought him to cultivate in that mansion in Pingyang town. He felt a sense of pride and could not help but laugh. "Miss Dai, that's not all I've accomplished. There's also that green lotus clone, right? I've already seen it." Dai Yu looked in the direction of the Kunlun ruins with a calm expression. Although the green lotus true body did not reveal any bloodline aura over there, it could not hide from Dai Yu's senses. "That's not all." Su Zimo's eyes were clear and shone brightly. "Oh?" Dai Yu pondered for a while and shook her head. "More than that I know nothing. I can only wait for you to tell me." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. To think that despite her strength, Dai Yu could not sense the existence of the martial Dao prime body. The martial Dao prime body was indeed a variable. Su Zimo opened his mouth and wanted to mention the martial Dao prime body. However, on second thought, he did not say it. It was not because he wanted to hide anything from Dai Yu. It was because even now, he could not find the martial Dao prime body. Furthermore, in the depths of his heart, he was secretly looking forward to the day when the martial Dao prime body could meet Dai Yu personally. To be precise, the martial Dao prime body was Su Zimo. The current Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body were not the true him. The current Dai Yu was not the real Dai Yu either. The moment the martial Dao prime body met Dai Yu would be the true reunion between the two of them. When Dai Yu saw that Su Zimo wanted to speak but stopped, she did not ask further. She merely smiled and ignored the gazes of the living beings of the 10,000 races. She pulled Su Zimo's wrist naturally. "Let's go." Right in front of everyone, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat when Dai Yu grabbed his wrist. He blushed and asked instinctively, "Where to?" Dai Yu's gaze landed on the ancestral ground of the witch race. With a cold expression, she said, "These witches summoned their clansmen from the upper world to bully you. If I had not descended, you would have died. I can't let this matter go so easily. I've got to help you take revenge." Most of Su Zimo's attention was focused on Dai Yu's palm. He felt that the palm was indescribably soft and delicate. In fact, he even had an urge to take the initiative and hold Dai Yu's hand instead. Su Zimo smiled. "Actually, speaking of which, it was an emperor of our human race who descended from the upper world and bullied them first." "Oh." Dai Yu's expression was normal as she said indifferently, "You can bully others, but no one can bully you." Chapter 1746 Ascension. Chapter 1746 Ascension. If it was anyone else, that statement would naturally be unreasonable. However, no one dared to question it when Dai Yu said it. Furthermore, it seemed logical and justified. In the blink of an eye, Dai Yu had already brought Su Zimo to the ancestral ground of the witch race. At that moment, more than 100,000 witches were gathered in the valley above the witch race's ancestral ground, looking up at Dai Yu and Su Zimo in the firmaments. Some of the witches were so scared that they knelt on the ground and begged. Some of the witches stood with their heads raised fearlessly and shouted, "Demonis, don't be arrogant. The experts of the witch race in the upper world have already received the news. Before long, they will descend and kill you. Demonis, I advise you to leave quickly." Dai Yu's expression was calm and there were no emotions in her eyes when she heard the shouts and curses below. Su Zimo glanced sideways. He could tell that Dai Yu truly did not care. Who would care if there were ants waving their arms beneath their feet in an arrogant manner? Dai Yu did not move at all. She merely extended her palm slowly and pushed down. It was a slow motion. However, when the jade-white palm descended, the skies suddenly darkened. Some of the witches who were cursing in the valley suddenly shut their mouths and widened their eyes, feeling a huge shadow envelop them. The eyes of many witches were filled with endless despair. Many witches tried their best to escape from the valley. However, no matter how they fled, they could not escape from the gigantic shadow. It was as though the skies had collapsed. There was nowhere to hide. No living being could survive from that shadow. The witches who were cursing earlier on had already broken down and knelt on the ground, crying and begging for mercy. Some of the patriarchs of the witch race summoned their dermic treasures and released divine powers towards the shadow in the skies. However, those dermic treasures and divine powers did not cause any ripples when they entered the shadow. Dermic treasures and divine powers were destroyed by a single touch from Dai Yu's palm. Dai Yu's palm descended slowly. There was clearly an endless void between them and the valley beneath their feet. However, it was as though the apocalypse had arrived in the valley. Cries, roars, howls, pleads for mercy, and tragic shrieks intertwined. Dai Yu's palm pressed down. Boom! A deafening bang that shook the heavens and earth sounded. The entire Tianhuang mainland seemed to have trembled. All the sounds earlier on vanished instantly. After that loud bang, Tianhuang mainland fell into a long period of silence. Everything went silent. The emperors of the human race and the experts of the world arrived above the firmaments, and looked down at the valley of the middle continent. To be precise, the valley had already vanished. In its place was a gigantic palm print with 5 fingers that caved in deeply in an extremely shocking manner. Blood filled the palm and life was extinguished. More than 100,000 witches died without exception. Su Zimo was not surprised by this. Back then, he was almost killed by cultivators of Joyful Clan. Before Dai Yu left, she killed the entire Joyful Clan. That was Dai Yu's method. The witch race did not have any goodwill when they summoned the experts of the upper world. If Dai Yu had not descended, there would have been even more extinct races in Tianhuang mainland if the experts of the witch race of the upper world were allowed to massacre wantonly. Those witches deserved to end up in such a state. While Su Zimo was mentally prepared, everyone else was scared out of their wits. Even the emperors of the human race, Long Ran and the others, were pale. She's way too domineering. Long Ran gulped and murmured. Just because she wanted revenge for Zimo, she casually destroyed the witch race. What would happen if this expert was enraged? Although Long Ran had seen Dai Yu before, he did not expect her to be able to release such a terrifying power. An emperor of the Kuan race at the side took a deep breath and composed himself. Thankfully, she's not our enemy. The storyteller's eyes were still filled with worry as he said softly, If it's as Elder Feng said and there are still experts from the upper world descending, it won't be easy for this senior to defend alone. After all, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. Furthermore, the upper world is vast and there's always someone better out there. At the mention of that, the other emperors frowned slightly as well. To be precise, the crisis of Tianhuang mainland had not passed completely. Above the firmaments. After killing the witch race, Dai Yu retracted her palm with a calm expression, as if she had casually done something extremely ordinary. She glanced sideways. Seeing that Su Zimo wanted to speak but stopped, she said, If you have any doubts, ask away. Miss Dai, can I meet you again after I ascend to the upper world? Not necessarily, Dai Yu said. In the trichiliocosm of the upper world, every world is countless times larger than Tianhuang mainland. Even in the great wilderness, there are many unknown places that I have not explored given my cultivation, let alone the trichiliocosm. Under normal circumstances, there are a few possibilities for your dragon phoenix body to ascend. The possibility of ascending to the dragon world, the parasol tree world, and the great wilderness is the greatest. Of course, there's also an extremely small chance of ascending to another world. If you manage to ascend to the great wilderness, there's a high chance that you can get to meet me. Su Zimo nodded, seemingly enlightened. The dragon phoenix true body possessed the bloodline of the dragon race. Therefore, there was a chance he could ascend to the dragon world. The parasol tree world that Dai Yu mentioned should be the world of the divine phoenixes. In the ancient books, there were some legends that said that the divine phoenixes only resided in parasol trees. The dragon phoenix possessed the bloodline of the divine phoenix as well and could ascend to the parasol tree world. The dragon phoenix could also be considered as a type of demon. Therefore, it was possible for him to ascend to the great wilderness. Dai Yu's gaze shifted to the green lotus true body in the Kunlun ruins. As for your green lotus body, there's a chance that you can ascend to the heavenly world. Heavenly world? Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Dai Yu nodded. You are right. There is a high chance that the humans in the billion minor kiliocosms will ascend to the heavenly world. The human emperor you mentioned earlier on should be someone from the heavenly world. Su Zimo nodded. Dai Yu said, Of course, there is only one creation green lotus in the entire world. It's entirely possible for you to ascend to any world. After Dai Yu's explanation, Su Zimo understood more about the upper world. The upper world included the Trichiliocosm, the heavenly world, great wilderness, dragon world, parasol tree world, witch world and god world were all a part of the Trichiliocosm. Dai Yu's expression turned unusually serious. You have to remember that the upper world is not as beautiful as what ordinary people imagine it to be. On the contrary, the cruelty of the upper world is 1,000 times more than the minor kiliocosms. Even with my cultivation, I can only dominate less than 50% of the upper world. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Chapter 1747 Heaven, Earth, Black and Yellow. Chapter 1747 Heaven, Earth, Black and Yellow. In Su Zimo's heart, Dai Yu was almost an invincible existence. But now, Dai Yu said it personally. Given her cultivation, she could only dominate less than 50% of the upper world. Even before Ascension, the vastness and mysteriousness of the upper world had already given Su Zimo a huge blow. Dai Yu said, Right now, you are invincible and unmatched on this mainland. However, if you ascend to the upper world, you are almost at the lowest level. Su Zimo nodded. Senior Human Emperor once told me that there are countless paragons and monster incarnates in the upper world. All those who can ascend are the top experts of the lower worlds. It's not just those who ascended from the lower worlds, Dai Yu said. In the upper world, there are many paragons who are born there. From the moment they are born, they are already at a higher level than the beings of the lower worlds. Suddenly, Su Zimo recalled something and asked, What's the cultivation of the 7 witches who descended from the upper world earlier on? They're just a few black witches. Dai Yu shook her head gently. Black witches are considered as the lowest level living beings in the witch world of the upper world. However, even the lowest level living beings of the upper world can suppress me with ease. Su Zimo smiled bitterly and shook his head. The supreme divine power I comprehended can't even defend against the lesser divine powers of the black witches. Dai Yu pondered for a while and said, There's no harm in telling you some things now. In the upper world, the first thing you have to experience is the 3 major realms. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he listened intently. He did not want to miss out on any information about the upper world. After all, the more one knew, the higher the chance of gaining a foothold after ascending to the upper world. Furthermore, at his current cultivation realm, he knew nothing about his future. Dai Yu said, The 3 major realms are the Black Essence, Earth Essence and Heavenly Essence realms. In the witch race, those at the Black Essence realm are called Black Witches. The immortal cultivators of the Black Essence realm are called Black Immortals, and so on. Of course, the civilizations of the Trichiliocosm are different. Although their titles might be different, there's not much changes to their corresponding cultivation realms. Su Zimo nodded and asked, Why are the 3 major cultivation realms called the Black, Earth and Heavenly Essence? Is there any significance behind them? Dai Yu did not reply. Instead she asked, Black, Earth and Heaven. According to this order, can you think of anything? Black, Earth, Heaven? Pondering for a moment, Su Zimo's eyes lit up and he blurted, Heaven, Earth, Black and Yellow? That's right. Dai Yu nodded. I got it, Su Zimo said. Heaven, Earth, Black and Yellow. Actually, yellow corresponds to the Emperor's one of the billion minor kiliocosms. Daiyu nodded slightly with a hint of admiration in her eyes. As for the essence in black, earth and heavenly essence, they represent the origin of the power of the upper world, heaven and earth essence chi. The heaven and earth essence chi is similar to the spirit chi in the minor kiliacosms. However, it's countless times stronger. Earlier on, you said that a lesser divine power of the black which destroyed your supreme divine power. That's because his lesser divine power was infused with heaven and earth essence chi. No wonder. Su Zimo came to a realization and lamented. To think that fusing with heaven and earth essence chi would cause divine powers to transform to such an extent. Daiyu said. The so-called divine power method was passed down from the upper world. The true power of divine powers can only be released when it is fused with the heaven and earth essence chi. After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo asked again, does that mean that if I can master heaven and earth essence chi, I can release divine powers at will? Of course not. Daiyu shook her head. Typically, cultivators of the black essence realm can only release lesser divine powers. Those of the earth essence realm can only release greater divine powers. Only those of the heavenly essence realm can release supreme divine powers. Firstly, the heaven and earth essence chi required to release greater or supreme divine powers is immense and can't be activated unless one's cultivation realm is high enough. Secondly, if one's cultivation realm is not high enough, their body and essence spirit won't be able to withstand the burden of releasing greater and supreme divine powers. Su Zimo memorized everything in his mind and tried his best to comprehend it. Daiyu said, your vision has to be broader and more far-sighted. In the upper world, there are not only divine powers, but also countless treasures and secret skills, many of which I have never seen before. The upper world not only has peerless divine powers, but also a few taboo mystic classics. If you can obtain any of them, it'll be enough for you to use for the rest of your life. Peerless divine powers. The first time he heard those words was from the storyteller. However, the storyteller had once said that it was only a legend and he had never seen them before either. Now he knew from Daiyu that peerless divine powers did exist. Furthermore, they were in the upper world. However, even heavenly essence experts could only release supreme divine powers. What sort of power did one have to possess to release peerless divine powers? As though she could read Su Zimo's mind, Daiyu said, there are naturally higher levels after the heavenly essence realm. However, you are still far from that. There are 9 levels to every major realm of black, earth, and heavenly essence. There's a huge difference between each level, and the difference between the 3 essence realms is even greater. Su Zimo asked, Miss Dai, is your cultivation realm above the heavenly essence realm? Of course. Daiyu nodded. The human emperor you mentioned is also above the heavenly essence realm. Su Zimo sighed internally. Initially, he thought that he would be able to catch up to Daiyu soon after ascending to the upper world. To think that there was such a huge gap between him and Daiyu. The conversation between the two of them was isolated by Daiyu's secret skill and no one could hear it. Daiyu's gaze landed on the green lotus true body. After looking at it for a while, she said, it's rare that it has grown to the peak of grade 8. That's right. It's a pity that I haven't been able to break through to grade 9, Su Zimo said. The green lotus true body had been at the peak of grade 8 for some time now. Even after comprehending 3 supreme divine powers, the green lotus true body could not break through the barrier of grade 8 and seemed to have reached a bottleneck. The creation green lotus is the only one in the world. I don't know how it grows either, Daiyu said. However, a grade 9 creation green lotus is not the limit. The true peak is at grade 12. Furthermore, the later 4 grades of the creation green lotus will produce even greater opportunities. The potential of this clone is definitely not weaker than your dragon phoenix body. In fact, it might even surpass the dragon phoenix. Daiyu had an extremely high evaluation of the green lotus true body. Su Zimo had countless things he wanted to say to Daiyu. However, right then, Daiyu suddenly looked up at the crack in the firmaments and said softly, it's here. The moment she said that, a repressing aura surged into Tianhuang mainland through the crack. Splash! A green river floated in the firmaments, emitting a rich, evil aura. Every single drop of water in the river contained an extremely terrifying power that was enough to kill any emperor of Tianhuang mainland. Chapter 1748 9 Neonate Curse. Chapter 1748 9 Neonate Curse. The green river crossed the firmaments, and 4 figures appeared faintly in the river, emitting a powerful aura that overwhelmed the world. Su Zimo reared his head and looked up. Given his cultivation realm, there was naturally no way he could detect the cultivation realms of those figures. However, he could sense that the 4 figures were clearly much stronger than the 7 witches of the upper world. "I've got to see who was the one who dared injured people from our witch world in this small lower world." A voice rumbled from the green river with a tremendous might that was sinister. The 4 experts of the witch world that descended were only faintly visible in the green river. Although they did not reveal themselves, their spirit consciousnesses scanned Tianhuang mainland brazenly. "Damn it! The witch race here has been annihilated!" Before long, the 4 experts of the witch world discovered the gigantic blood-colored palm print in the witch race's ancestral ground. A few ghastly green gazes burst forth from the green river in the firmaments, and looked at Dai Yu and Su Zimo, who were standing on the blood-colored palm print. The light of the eyes seemed to arrive instantly. Dai Yu took light steps and shielded Su Zimo behind her. She was indifferent and motionless. Before the green beams of light landed on Dai Yu, they had already dissipated into nothingness. "Oh!" A surprised voice sounded from the green river. "Woman, you're quite capable." Another voice sounded and asked coldly, "Who are you? Which part of the upper world are you from?" Dai Yu raised her head slightly and said indifferently, "You're just a few earth witches. You're not worthy of knowing my background." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. According to Dai Yu, the earth witches should be experts of the earth essence realm. Compared to the 7 witches of the upper world, they were indeed a major cultivation realm higher. "How dare you!" an earth witch hollered. "Stop being pretentious. No matter how strong you are, right now, you're merely a phenomenon in the lower world." The earth witch was indeed sharp and saw through Dai Yu's facade right away. Dai Yu said, "Even a single phenomenon is enough to deal with you guys." The moment she said that, Dai Yu struck directly. Her fair palms seemed to have passed through the endless void and arrived at the green river at the end of the firmament, patting gently. "You must have a death wish!" When the 4 earth witches saw that, they channeled their essence spirits, and the green river created raging tides that devoured Dai Yu's palm. The green river was condensed from the essence energy in their bodies and contained an extremely strong corrosive power mixed with evil curses. Even divine weapons of the upper world could not defend against the power of the green river, let alone flesh and blood. "How pretentious! Get the hell down!" Dai Yu scolded softly. Her palm shone with divine lights and slapped the green river. The filth and stickiness of the green river did not taint Dai Yu's palm at all. Boom! There was a loud bang. The entire green river that crossed the firmaments seemed to have frozen instantly, and was motionless. Thereafter, it let out a loud bang and was shattered by Dai Yu's palm. The green river turned into dark green rain that descended from the skies and almost enveloped Tianhuang mainland. In the skies of Penlai Island, an emperor of the Golden Crow race was initially in his true form and stood on the clouds. To think that the dark green rain would descend from the skies. A drop of rain landed on him. Just a single drop. Poof! The drop of rain corroded a bloody hole in his body. Immediately after, the terrifying power contained by the rain devoured his Golden Crow body in the blink of an eye. The essence spirit of the Golden Crow Emperor had just escaped when it was pierced by another drop of rain and died on the spot. The expressions of the emperors of the human race, Long Ran and the others changed starkly when they saw that. Most of the power of the Green River had dissipated after it was shattered by Dai Yu. However, the remnant power that turned into rainwater was still so terrifying. Even emperors could not defend against it. Which living being in Tianhuang mainland could survive the downpour? Dai Yu had a calm expression. She rubbed her jade-like fingers gently, and a small flame appeared on her fingertips. The flame flickered on Dai Yu's fingertip, as if it could be extinguished by a gust of wind. However, after the flame appeared, the dark green rain was burned before it even descended on Tianhuang mainland, turning into the richest spirit qi and fusing into Tianhuang mainland. As for the 4 earth witches, they were already revealed by Dai Yu's palm and looked wretched. Kill! The 4 of them shouted and attacked one after another. An earth witch slapped his storage bag and summoned a dark green skull that was as huge as a mountain. The skull opened its mouth as though it wanted to devour the world. Thick, dark green essence qi surged out from the eye sockets and mouth of the skull continuously with torrential flames that blanketed the skies. 9 Neonate curse! Another earth witch channeled his essence spirit and released a greater divine power. Even living beings of Tianhuang mainland had not seen the 9 Neonate curse before. The 9 Neonate curse was extremely vicious. In order to cultivate that greater divine power, one had to use a secret skill as well as a living infant as tribute. For a full 49 days, he had to refine it using secret skills continuously and maintain the infant's life force to ensure that the infant did not die. Eventually, the infant would die in pain. The infant's soul would be filled with endless resentment, and would be captured by the witch race to cultivate that greater divine power. The moment the greater divine power was formed, 9 resentful infants appeared in midair with tragic expressions and cried. The 9 resentful infants charged towards Dai Yu in different directions. The 3rd earth witch waved his bone staff and drew a semicircle in front of him. In the semicircle, many crooked incantations appeared and enveloped Dai Yu like dark green spirit snakes. The 4th earth witch's bone staff paused on the ground. Immediately after, dark green flowers appeared beneath Dai Yu's feet one after another. Like the palms of evil spirits, they grabbed towards Dai Yu's ankles. The 4 earth witches attacked at the same time without holding back. Many experts of Tianhuang mainland were not involved. However, they could still sense the terrifying power released by the earth witch experts. Be it the skull or the divine powers and secret skills, each of them was enough to sweep through Tianhuang mainland and kill all living beings. Dai Yu's expression was unchanged, and her eyes were calm. Suddenly, she raised her foot and stomped gently. Boom! The void beneath her feet shattered like a gigantic ancient mirror and dense cracks appeared on it. The dark green flowers that had just grown were crushed by Dai Yu's stomp. How dare you descend to the lower world with such capabilities? Before Dai Yu's words were finished, the ground beneath the feet of the earth witch who summoned the dark green flower earlier on suddenly split open and a gigantic spike burst forth. The spike pierced the earth witch's body. The earth witch died on the spot. Chapter 1749 Peerless Magnificence. Chapter 1749 Peerless Magnificence. Thereafter, Dai Yu waved her wide sleeves and attacked the descending incantations of the witch race. Boom! There was a loud bang. The incantations dissipated instantly. Dai Yu's sleeves were scarlet as blood. After dispelling the incantations, her strength did not diminish and she collided heavily against the earth witch. Bang! The body of the earth witch was torn apart by the seemingly weak sleeves and his essence spirit was destroyed, dying on the spot. Dai Yu's gaze shifted as she looked at the gigantic skull in the firmaments. She did not extend her hand. She opened her mouth slightly and let out a white stream of qi. Qi! The white qi was like a long sword that burst forth with an extremely sharp edge. It defied gravity and entered the gigantic skull. Qi sword! Su Zimo was shocked. Such methods were nothing special in the cultivation world and were extremely ordinary. Anyone with strong lungs and terrifying breathing could do that. However, the sword that was condensed from a single qi stream defied gravity and soared into the skies to fight against the weapons of the earth which experts of the upper world. That was completely beyond Su Zimo's understanding. Boom! 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 The mountain-sized skull began to collapse and countless bone shards fell from midair. The earth witch's weapon was sliced into pieces by Dai Yu's qi sword. Suddenly, the earth witch behind the skull tilted his head and his eyes dimmed. He fell from midair, and there were no longer any signs of life in his body. Dead? Dai Yu's chi sword had not only destroyed his weapon, it even killed him on the spot. In the blink of an eye, only one of the 4 Earth Witches was left. Su Zimo was shielded by Dai Yu, and none of the divine powers and secret skills released by the 4 Earth Witches even made contact with him. The living beings of the 10,000 races raised their heads and looked at everything with dumbfounded expressions. Although the blood-robed expert was a woman, she was incomparably domineering and looked down on the world, suppressing all the experts of the upper world with an almost invincible stance. Even the emperors of Tianhuang mainland were completely convinced, let alone the other living beings. The blood-robed woman was like an empress that looked down on the world with disdain. Domineering, aggressive and invincible. Long Ran grinned. Back then, although I saw her at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, I never expected her to be so terrifying. The storyteller's palm trembled slightly as well. He took out an ancient book from his storage bag, as though he wanted to record something. However, after a long time, he could not write a single word and could only sigh. The eternal human emperor can be recorded and described using words. However, no words can describe a fraction of this senior's magnificence. Previously, as the storyteller of Enigma Palace, he would record every major event in Tianhuang mainland. However, at that moment, the storyteller could not write a single word. Above the firmaments, the 9 resentful infants had tragic expressions and let out ear-piercing cries. Their green eyes widened as they lunged towards Dai Yu. Dai Yu did not move at all and had no intention of attacking. She stood there with a calm expression. When the 9 resentful infants arrived before Dai Yu, the ferocity on their faces vanished and turned into fear, as though they were shocked. There was naturally no way the 9 resentful infants knew Dai Yu. However, they were the most sensitive and sensed an extremely terrifying aura from Dai Yu. There was no longer hatred in the eyes of the 9 resentful infants. Instead, there was a pleading look. In fact, the 9 infants clasped their hands and bowed to Dai Yu repeatedly. While it looked clumsy, they were in fact extremely pitiful. Although they were condensed from divine powers, they could sense that the blood-robed woman before them could truly free them. Disperse. Dai Yu spoke softly. The colors of the 9 infants began to change, turning from dark green to pink and healthy. A look of relief flashed through the eyes of the 9 infants. Before long, the 9 infants dissipated into the world. Dai Yu did not even have to attack. A single word was all that was required to dispel that greater divine power. Not only that, Dai Yu even severed the origin of the greater divine power completely this time round. The Earth Witch would never be able to condense that divine power again. The Earth Witch's face was livid with fear. He also realized that the blood-robed woman before him was not someone he could defend against. In a flash, he turned and fled towards the crack in the firmaments. You've cultivated such a vicious divine power and karma has befallen you. Today will be your death anniversary, Dai Yu said. She stretched out her hand and clenched it gently through the void. Before the Earth Witch could escape into the crack, he turned into a blood mist and died on the spot. The 4 experts of the witch world that descended were all dead. Dai Yu waved her hand and put away the storage bags of the 7 black witches and 4 earth witches. With a slight exertion of strength, the storage bags shattered in her palm and the contents were revealed. She handed them to Su Zimo without even looking at them. Take these things. Under normal circumstances, although the witches of the upper world were dead, their spirit consciousness imprints were still on their storage bags. Given Su Zimo's strength, there was no way he could open them. When Dai Yu thought about that, she did not even bother to remove the spirit consciousness imprints, and shattered the storage bags completely. What's all this? Su Zimo received it with a confused expression. There were many things in the storage bags of the witches of the upper world, elixirs, weapons, materials and everything else. However, Su Zimo did not recognize most of them. In fact, he had never even seen many of the materials before. Dai Yu took a casual glance and said, "These witches are very poor and have nothing good. Most of these things belong to the witch race and are not of much use to you." Keep those few bottles of elixirs safe. She pointed to a few bottles among them. These are essence condensation elixirs. In the upper world, when cultivators of the black essence realm cultivate, these are the most commonly consumed elixirs. Not only does the essence condensation elixir contain heaven and earth essence chi, it can also help cultivators absorb heaven and earth essence chi better. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he asked, "If I consume the essence condensation elixir to cultivate now, can I control the heaven and earth essence chi?" "Of course not." Daiyu shook her head. "You have not gone through the tribulation transcendence yet. Only after doing that can your flesh and essence spirit attempt to absorb heaven and earth essence chi. Although you're a dragon phoenix now, if you consume this essence condensation pill, you won't be able to withstand the power of the elixir and will explode on the spot." Su Zimo was secretly speechless. Even the most ordinary elixir in the upper world possessed such terrifying power. Chapter 1750 One-Eyed Living Being. Chapter 1750 One-Eyed Living Being. Daiyu took another look and pointed to 7 stones the size of an infant's fist. These are essence spirit stones and they contain rich heaven and earth essence chi. They are also important cultivation resources and are even more precious than those essence condensation elixirs. Given my current cultivation, I'm still unable to absorb the heaven and earth essence chi within, right? Su Zimo asked. Daiyu shook her head gently. Even if you complete your tribulation transcendence and ascend to become a cultivator of the black essence realm, you won't be able to absorb the heaven and earth essence chi within, let alone your current cultivation realm. This essence spirit stone is something that can only be absorbed by earth essence realm cultivators. Only black essence realm cultivators who have cultivated the few taboo mystic classics of the upper world will be able to absorb the heaven and earth essence chi within. Taboo mystic classics? Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He had heard Daiyu mention that term earlier on, and his eyes flashed with curiosity. The taboo mystic classics are ranked alongside a few supreme divine powers. These are too far away from you and it's useless to tell you about them now. Daiyu did not continue. Su Zimo nodded and did not ask further. He carefully placed the few bottles of essence condensation elixirs and 7 essence spirit stones in a separate storage bag and put them away. Just as Daiyu was about to speak, she frowned and looked up. Boom! Boom! There was a loud bang. Suddenly, a gigantic foot descended from the crack in the firmaments. Its thick thigh was like a heavenly piercing divine pillar. The gigantic foot carried an apocalyptic aura and formed a humongous shadow. It descended from the skies and stomped heavily on the East Sea. Instantly, a massive tsunami surged in all directions from the East Sea. Right away, countless living beings in the East Sea were trampled to death by that stomp. The living beings of the 10,000 races were shocked. The bottomless East Sea created massive waves. However, the massive waves that were dozens of feet tall did not even reach the living beings' ankles. The experts of Tianhuang mainland looked up with pale expressions. Even with their vision, they could not see the end to catch sight of the living being's full appearance. To be precise, a single thigh from that living being was already enough to penetrate the entire Tianhuang mainland. It's not over yet? Daiyu's expression gradually turned cold. She waved her sleeves and flung it towards the thigh that connected heaven and earth. His scarlet sleeves seemed to have transformed into a blood-colored saber that slashed across the thigh. Poof! That heavenly piercing thigh was sliced into 2 by Daiyu's sleeves. Fresh blood gushed out and dyed the East Sea red. The lower half of the thigh fell heavily into the East Sea, creating blood waves. Roar! A pained and furious roar sounded from the firmaments. Boom! Immediately after, a gigantic palm descended from the firmaments, covering the skies as it grabbed towards Daiyu. The gigantic palm seemed to envelop the entire middle continent of Tianhuang mainland. The living beings of the 10,000 races were shocked. They had never seen such a massive living being before. A palm covered the skies and enveloped the middle continent. A single foot was enough to fill the East Sea. Most importantly, up till now, the living beings of the 10,000 races had yet to see the full appearance of this living being and did not know what it was. Dai Yu's expression was unchanged. She looked at the palm that was reaching for her and punched in reverse. Compared to the gigantic palm that covered the sky, her fist was like a speck of dust. However, that punch shattered the palm into pieces. Roar! Roar! The roars in the firmaments intensified. The consecutive heavy injuries had already caused the living being to enter a berserk state. Suddenly, the skies darkened. A large shadow descended slowly, and in the middle of it, a gigantic eyeball appeared. It was ferocious and carried endless rage and killing intent. The living beings of the 10,000 races had never seen such a gigantic eye. That eye was comparable to the stars in the firmaments, and was filled with a powerful might. An image flashed through the minds of the living beings of the 10,000 races. A living being that resembled a gigantic god stepped into Tianhuang mainland and reached out with one hand. After being severely injured, it bent down to check things out. That shadow was the face of that living being. The living being had no nose, ears, or mouth. There was only a gigantic single eye. Humph! Dai Yu snorted and raised her hand, pointing at the single eye in the firmaments. The jade-like finger tore through the air like a sharp sword and entered the single eye. That single eye was blinded by Dai Yu's finger. Ah! The living being howled tragically, and its voice grew further and further away. It had clearly escaped from Tianhuang mainland. Suddenly, a gigantic ancient bell descended from the crack in the firmaments. The surface of the ancient bell was filled with runes that were antiquated and mysterious, emitting a powerful aura with a terrifying might. Even the single-eyed living being earlier on could not match the aura released by the ancient bell. Dai Yu waved her sleeves and whipped the ancient bell fiercely. Clang! When her sleeves whipped the ancient bell, it rang loudly. Cracks appeared densely in the firmaments of Tianhuang mainland from the bell. Instead of retreating, the ancient bell enveloped Dai Yu's head, as though it wanted to fight her. Dai Yu's eyes shone brightly. She reached out and slapped the ancient bell. Dong! The ancient bell shuddered and let out a loud ring. Immediately after, the runes on the ancient bell burst forth and shone with a resplendent divine light that enveloped Dai Yu's palm. From the looks of it, the ancient bell wanted to fight Dai Yu in Dermic arts. Poof! 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 The runes collided with Dai Yu's palm and shattered one after another. They could not defend against her power at all. Boom! In a flash, Dai Yu's palm shattered many runes and slapped the ancient bell heavily. Su Zimo could clearly see that there was a huge dent on the ancient bell with Dai Yu's palm print deeply imprinted on it. Buzz! Buzz! As though it was sentient, the ancient bell let out a series of sorrowful cries. Suddenly, an extremely massive power burst forth from the ancient bell. It illuminated, forming rays of light. The surface of the ancient bell shone brightly. The sunken palm print on the ancient bell was gradually recovering. You're trying to test the waters with a sentient immortal weapon without the guts to reveal your true body? Seems like you don't want this immortal weapon anymore. Dai Yu's expression was cold. She leaped up and left Su Zimo's side, rushing towards the ancient bell. Up till this point of the battle, this was the first time Dai Yu had left Su Zimo's side. It was clear that she was prepared to use her full strength to retain the ancient bell. As though it sensed danger, the ancient bell did not dare to linger and transformed into a streak of light, escaping towards the crack in the firmaments. Dai Yu was about to give chase when her expression changed slightly. Chapter 1751, White-Robed Man. Chapter 1751, White-Robed Man. Suddenly, a figure descended from the crack in the firmaments. The person's black hair fell and he wore a white shirt. He looked handsome and his eyes were like stars. With his hands behind his back, he looked like an immortal. It seemed to be a human. This was a human of the upper world. Standing in midair, the white-robed man swept his gaze across Tianhuang mainland and murmured, "This minor chiliocosm is not bad. The 10,000 races coexist. There's even a divine Ho? Suddenly, his gaze landed on the dragon phoenix true body. He sniffed, and his eyes lit up. The aura of a dragon phoenix! Ha ha! The white-robed man laughed. Not bad, not bad! I can capture this divine hoe and dragon phoenix as my immortal pets. However, I still have to look for the creation green lotus first. Where is it? The white-robed man surveyed his surroundings. In a few breaths, his gaze landed on the Kunlun ruins and the green lotus true body. Su Zimo felt his body turn cold and his hair stood on end. So, it's hidden here. The white-robed man clicked his tongue in wonder. To think that it would fuse so well with flesh. How rare. Under the gaze of the white-robed man, Su Zimo felt as though he was seen through from head to toe, as though there were no secrets to speak of. Su Zimo was secretly alarmed. Be it the witch race, the one-eyed living being or the ancient bell, none of the experts from the upper world could find the green lotus true body. However, this white-robed man could find him right away. Although he did not know the cultivation realm of the white-robed man, the latter was definitely more terrifying than all the previous experts of the upper world. Eh? The white-robed man's gaze landed on Nianqi and his eyes lit up. Not bad, this woman from the god race is not bad. Her looks and figure are all top grade. I can take her back. Swoosh! In a flash, the white-robed man descended above the Kunlun ruins. He looked at Su Zimo. I'm refining an immortal pill and lack the creation green lotus. After refining you, I'll definitely succeed in creating the immortal pill. It's your honor to die as my pill refinement material, the white-robed man said proudly, and reached out to grab Su Zimo. Suddenly, a blood-colored figure flashed before Su Zimo. You must have a death wish! A cold glint flashed through the white-robed man's eyes as an extremely terrifying power burst forth from his palm towards Daiyu. Daiyu's expression was unchanged. She merely flipped her palm casually. Bang! The two of them exchanged blows and collided with a loud bang. The white-robed man shuddered and his expression changed slightly. Su Zimo was secretly alarmed as well. Up till this point of the battle, this white-robed man was the only one who could defend against Daiyu's attack without being injured. Not only that, the white-robed man did not even retreat half a step. Su Zimo could not help but feel worried. However, Daiyu's expression was calm and her eyes were still unmoved. She merely looked at the white-robed man coldly. Who are you? The white-robed man narrowed his eyes and asked sternly. Scram! Daiyu did not say anything more. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Daiyu was decisive to kill. Normally, she would not waste her breath on the white-robed man nor would she let him leave. But now, she seemed to have reservations. Could this white-robed man be so strong that he could threaten Daiyu? You're merely a bloodline phenomenon. How strong can you be? The white-robed man smirked and saw through Daiyu's facade instantly. Daiyu said indifferently, You are merely a clone as well. That's the difference. The white-robed man said proudly. This clone of mine has its own essence spirit. It was formed after I cultivated for hundreds of thousands of years. It's not something that your bloodline phenomenon can compare to. I'm definitely going to get my hands on the creation green lotus in this minor kiliocosm. The white-robed man said coldly, I'll kill whoever stands in my way today. Even if your true body dares to descend, I'll kill you as well. Before his sentence was finished, a blinding light appeared on the white-robed man's glabella. Ugh! Su Zimo, Nianqi and the others could not help but grunt when they felt an immense pressure against the ball of light. The light was even more dazzling than the blazing sun in the firmaments, and possessed an incomparably terrifying might. This clone actually managed to cultivate to such a realm? Daiyu narrowed her eyes slightly. It's too late for regrets now. The white-robed man hollered and the light on his glabella released an extremely terrifying power that surged into his hands. The terrifying power rapidly formed a gigantic sword in the white-robed man's palm. Although that sword was not a true weapon, it was countless times stronger than the ancient bell earlier on. Slay! Raising his sword, the white-robed man slashed towards Daiyu, You want to kill me? Daiyu's gaze turned cold. Seems like you don't know who I am. Before her sentence was finished, Daiyu's figure suddenly disappeared. A blood-colored butterfly the size of 10 feet appeared in midair. 2 full moons were imprinted on the wings of the blood-colored butterfly, and it glared at the white-robed man coldly like a pair of eyes. Su Zimo held his breath and focused. Prior to this, Daiyu had never transformed into her true form. With just casual attacks, she suppressed all the experts of the upper world. But now, Daiyu had reverted to her true form against the white-robed man. Fu! The white-robed man sneered. Of the butterfly race, only the golden butterfly sovereigns are strong. You're just a red butterfly. As though he thought of something, the white-robed man could not continue. Why you? Blood drained from the white-robed man's face as his eyes widened in fear. His arm trembled slightly as he pointed at Daiyu and said with a quivering voice, Why, you're that blood butterfly from the great wilderness! The moment he said that, the white-robed man turned to flee without hesitation. Daiyu's wings flapped. That tremble was almost negligible. However, the white-robed man's body suddenly spasmed violently and gigantic cracks appeared on the sword that he had just conjured. Crack! 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 Boom! There was a loud bang. The bedazzling sword shattered. The white-robed man spat out blood with a shocked expression and wanted to continue escaping. However, Daiyu's wings trembled again. That single tremble seemed to create a terrifying and apocalyptic storm that descended on the white-robed man instantly. The white-robed man's flesh fell off continuously in the storm and fresh blood splattered everywhere. Ah! 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 He let out a series of tragic cries. Blood butterfly! Empress! Please spare! In the storm, the white-robed man's voice sounded intermittently, as though he was begging for mercy. Chapter 1752 Dao Fruit. Chapter 1752 Dao Fruit. The white-robed man begged for mercy, but Daiyu was indifferent and ignored him. Since she had already attacked and incurred a huge feud, she would not let him leave. Daiyu reverted to her human form and with light steps, entered the terrifying storm. The storm was tearing at the white-robed man's flesh wildly. In a few breaths, the white-robed man was turned into a skeleton by the storm. However, there was still a powerful life force within the white-robed man's body that struggled against the surrounding storm. Su Zimo focused his gaze. Through the layers of storms, one could vaguely see a bedazzling light the size of a goose egg within the white-robed man's skull. Even in the terrifying storm, the ball of light did not extinguish and was filled with divine lights that were injected into the white-robed man's bones to maintain his life force. If not for that, the white-robed man would have been torn into pieces by the storm. Daiyu leaped into the storm and extended her palm, landing on the head of the white-robed man. She exerted strength in her palm and her jade-white fingers pierced into the white-robed man's skull. Crack! Accompanied by a jarring sound, Daiyu reached out and removed the top of the white-robed man's head. Ah! The white-robed man let out another tragic cry. Daiyu turned a deaf ear to him. With a calm expression, she reached into the white-robed man's head with her fair palm and took out the dazzling ball of light. Why you destroyed my cultivation? The white-robed man could not finish his sentence. It was as though the white-robed man's source of power was severed the moment Daiyu took out that dazzling ball of light. In the blink of an eye, his body and bones were destroyed by the violent storm and shattered. Daiyu waved her sleeves gently and the storm dispersed. The world returned to normal once more, as though everything that happened earlier was just an illusion. Daiyu took off the storage bag of the white-robed man and shattered it. A large number of items scattered out of the storage bag. There were elixirs, cultivation techniques, weapons and everything else. There were many times more compared to the Black and Earth Witches earlier on. Although Su Zimo did not recognize any of them, he could tell that the items in the white-robed man's storage bag were clearly much better. More importantly, there were 10,000 of the essence spirit stones that Daiyu had mentioned earlier. At that moment, Su Zimo did not know how precious the Essence Spirit Stones were in the upper world. Essence Spirit Stones were not only cultivation resources in the upper world, they were also a form of currency circulated in the upper world. In the upper world, black immortals were unable to absorb the essence chi of the Essence Spirit Stones and had almost no Essence Spirit Stones. Even among the Earth immortals, 10,000 Essence Spirit Stones was a considerable sum. This time round, without waiting for Dai Yu's guidance, Su Zimo put away all the Essence Spirit Stones in a storage bag for safekeeping. Dai Yu's palm held the bedazzling ball of light. She exerted strength in her palm and the ball of light dimmed before long. In the blink of an eye, there was only a round jade the size of a goose egg left in her palm. It looked extremely ordinary. There were even a few faint patterns on the jade. Dai Yu came before Su Zimo and handed him the jade stone that was the size of a goose egg. She said indifferently, "This is that person's Dao Fruit. It contains his Dao techniques." Su Zimo was about to receive it when his heart skipped a beat when he heard that. He suddenly thought of the martial Dao Prime Body. The martial Dao Prime Body was formed from the martial Dao Fruit. However, the process of forming the martial Dao Fruit was extremely special. That was because he created the martial Dao and obtained the augmentation of a vow. He condensed the profoundness and will of the martial Dao, fusing it with the faith of all living beings before condensing a martial Dao Fruit. The Dao Fruit in Dai Yu's palm was clearly different from his martial Dao Fruit. Dai Yu thought that Su Zimo was worried about something and said, "I have already sealed the power of this Dao Fruit. It is of no threat to you. Of course, given your current cultivation, you're far from reaching that level. You can put it away for the time being. Once you reach a certain cultivation realm, this Dao Fruit might be useful to you." Although Dai Yu said it casually, Su Zimo could still tell that the value of the Dao Fruit was much greater than any Essence Spirit Stone. "Miss Dai, please keep this Dao Fruit," Su Zimo replied. "What use do I have for it?" Dai Yu curled her lips and shook her head. "Although this thing is precious, it is not worthy of my attention. It's something I'll just throw away casually." With that said, Dai Yu threw it casually. Su Zimo caught it hurriedly and placed it on a separate storage bag. "What's his cultivation realm in the upper world?" he could not help but ask. "His true body should be similar to the human emperor you mentioned," Dai Yu replied indifferently. Pausing for a moment, she continued, "He is someone from the heavenly world. Given his cultivation, he definitely has a high status in the heavenly world and can rule over an entire area. It wasn't easy for his clone to cultivate to this realm and form a Dao Fruit. Now that I destroyed his clone, I've incurred a huge feud with him. Naturally, he won't dare to take revenge on me. However, if you ascend to the heavenly world, you'll have to be careful. Of course, if you ascend to the great wilderness, you won't have to worry about him. I'll naturally ensure your safety." Suddenly, Su Zimo recalled something. When Dai Yu saw that person, she did not attack immediately. Instead, she told him to get lost. Unfortunately, the white-robed man did not recognize Dai Yu's background and wanted to kill her. In the end, he ended up in such a state. At that time, Su Zimo thought that this person had a powerful background and even Dai Yu was wary of him. Now, he finally understood that Dai Yu was worried about him. At the same time, Su Zimo felt emotional. Initially, he thought that his green lotus and dragon phoenix true bodies were already unprecedented monster incarnates. To think that the white-robed man had a clone as well that was similar to his two true bodies. In fact, the white-robed man's clone was even stronger and more terrifying. Thankfully, he still had the martial Dao Prime Body. Even Dai Yu did not notice the martial Dao Prime Body. Su Zimo still had countless questions he wanted to ask and endless words to confide in her. However, Dai Yu shook her head at the moment. "Let's wait a while." She looked at the crack in the firmaments. "If this crack is not repaired, more living beings of the upper world will come down. My phenomenon is about to disperse. I'd better repair the crack first." With that said, Dai Yu leaped up and flew towards the firmament. It was only now that Su Zimo realized that Dai Yu's figure seemed to have become more illusory after the battle. She was not as corporeal as before. Right now, the Dao before him was merely formed by his bloodline phenomenon, and could not even be considered as a clone. The continuous battles took a huge toll on the bloodline phenomenon. Chapter 1753 Mending the Heavens. Chapter 1753 Mending the Heavens. Right in front of the living beings of the 10,000 races, Dao stood in the firmaments. With a wave of her hands, streams of divine light spilled onto the crack. As though it was pulled by an invisible force, the crack closed slowly like a miracle. Dao mended the crack in the heavens. That scene was extremely shocking. The storyteller, Long Ran, and the emperors of the human race revealed deep admiration as they bowed down towards the blood-colored figure in the firmaments. Everyone knew that if the crack was still present, the living beings of Tianhuang mainland could meet with misfortune at any moment. Dao's action was equivalent to saving the entire Tianhuang mainland. As long as the heaven and earth were fixed perfectly and the laws were complete, it would be way too difficult for anyone from the upper world to descend. First, someone from the lower world had to release a secret skill to summon them. Now that the witch race was destroyed, apart from the storyteller, no one else knew the secret skill. Second, even if someone summoned them, those of the upper world would require an extremely powerful cultivation to descend. At the very least, they had to be comparable to the eternal human emperor. More importantly, even when the eternal human emperor descended, he suffered an immense backlash and his body collapsed. His essence spirit was severely injured and his cultivation realm fell. Up till now, he had yet to re-establish a connection with the human emperor's palace. Who would be like the eternal human emperor who was willing to make such a huge sacrifice to save the masses of Tianhuang mainland? There was only a single eternal human emperor. The entire mending process lasted for a long time and consumed a lot of Dao's energy. Su Zimo could clearly see Dao's figure dimming and turning increasingly illusory, as though she could dissipate and vanish from Tianhuang mainland at any moment. He was silent and looked at the blood-colored figure fixedly. Unconsciously, he was already clenching his fists nervously. He still had many things he wanted to tell Dao. He was worried that Dao would leave without bidding him farewell. After a long time, the crack in the firmaments finally closed completely without any gaps. Heaven and earth were complete, and the laws were perfected. Tianhuang mainland had returned to normal. The living beings of the 10,000 races shouted with delighted expressions. The scene of the experts of the upper world descending earlier on had a huge impact on them. It was like a nightmare that they did not dare to recall until now. Nobody wanted Tianhuang mainland to endure another calamity as such. Su Zimo did not laugh. Although Dao was still around, her figure had become extremely blurry and could dissipate at any moment. She walked towards Su Zimo. However, she had barely taken a few steps when her figure swayed and she almost broke down. Dao stopped in her tracks. Although Su Zimo knew that Dao was merely a bloodline phenomenon, he still felt a sense of reluctance and wanted to rush to her. Dao shook her head. "There's no need to come over. We can just talk a little more. Actually, your current cultivation is enough. Don't linger too long in the lower world. It's best if you ascend as soon as possible," Dao said. "In the upper world, no matter which world, you will experience a lot of discomfort." In the lower world, Su Zimo was the martial emperor who was respected by the 10,000 races, and could call the shots for everything. However, in the upper world, he would be at the bottom. It was difficult for everyone to accept such a huge difference. Dao said, "Back then, when I brought you to cultivate, I merely wanted to end the karma between us. I did not expect that you could cultivate to this stage. However, since you've come this far, I hope that you can work hard to adapt to the environment of the upper world and survive." Su Zimo could hear the concern and worry in Dao's tone. Dao said, "The upper world is a huge forest. It is even more cruel and bloody. You must remember that even I nearly died in the past. Back then, Dao was severely injured and came to Tianhuang mainland. That was when she met Su Zimo. If Dao was already so strong, How strong was the person who could injure her? Suzimo did not say anything. Right now, even if he wanted to help, he was helpless. However, he made up his mind that he would definitely cultivate as soon as possible after ascending to the upper world and catch up to Dai Yu. When they met again, Suzimo believed that he would give Dai Yu an even greater surprise. It's time for me to leave, Dai Yu sighed gently. She looked away from Suzimo and surveyed the entire Tianhuang mainland. She felt a sense of nostalgia towards this minor kiliocosm. Dai Yu's gaze paused on Pingyang town for a while, then on Senglang mountain range, and soon on the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Eh? Suddenly, she exclaimed softly, and her eyes lit up. She saw the 4 lines of words on the wall of the old temple at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. The first 2 lines were left behind by her many years ago. To become one of the greatest, you have to work on the foundation and be willing to take hardship and serve others. Behind the 2 lines of words were 2 new lines of words that were equally sharp and looked down on the world. Once the fog fades, the radiance shall illuminate through the entire world. Good, good, good. Dai Yu's eyes shone brightly as she nodded repeatedly. She could not help but laugh and praised. What boldness! You're comparable to me. She looked at Suzimo once more. I'll wait for you in the upper world. I hope that you can break through the mountains and rivers of the upper world and meet me again. With that said, Dai Yu's figure dissipated completely, disappearing from the world. It was not easy for Suzimo and Dai Yu to meet, but they did not get to talk much. They spent less than half a day together. He had so many more things to say to Dai Yu. Suzimo looked in that direction and sighed gently in disappointment. Young master, don't be disappointed. This senior said that you can ascend now, and you'll be able to see her then. Nianqi consoled softly at the side with a gentle expression. I'm fine. Suzimo nodded to Nianqi and smiled as well. As Nianqi had said, everything in Tianhuang mainland had basically come to an end. When the time was ripe, he could ascend and leave for the upper world. If he was lucky, he might even be able to ascend to the great wilderness. The battle triggered by the primordial 5 races had come to an end. The witch race was destroyed and the god race was imprisoned by Nianqi, prepared to be brought back to God's mainland. Of the original primordial 9 races, only 7 races were left. Among the 7 races, the dragon, Kun and barbarian races were the absolute victors. The remaining 4 races suffered immense losses and would probably not recover without 10,000 years. Right after Dai Yu left, a few bubbles appeared in the initially silent 1,000-year blood sea. In the depths of a cemetery in the middle continent, another series of squeaking sounds echoed from an ancient coffin, as though something sharp was scraping against the coffin walls. Blood waves surged in the East Sea. In the blood wave, a small boat strangely appeared. On it stood a fisherman with a green bamboo hat and a fishnet beneath his feet. It's time to reel in the net. The fisherman raised his head slightly and looked at Tianhuang mainland from afar. He murmured softly, and a strange blood glint flashed through his eyes. Chapter 1754 Fate Rings Secret Ground. Chapter 1754 Fate Rings Secret Ground. After Dai Yu mended the heavens and the battle ended, the emperors of the human race as well as the storyteller did not leave. Instead, they stayed temporarily in the Dragon Bone Valley under Suzimo's suggestion. Nianqi had already returned to God's mainland with the god race. Suzimo had always been worried. Although the battle had ended, the blood face had not truly appeared the entire time. The strange thing was that Monk Daming did not appear either. According to his speculation, the calamities of Tianhuang mainland started from 30,000 years ago. From the 1,000 demon tribulation to the astral tribulation, Great Qian catastrophe, and eventually, the catastrophe of the 10,000 races today, the blood face had succeeded. Although they won this battle, the 10,000 races of Tianhuang mainland suffered immense losses as well. Blood flowed through Tianhuang mainland and corpses were strewn everywhere. In the end, experts of the upper world were implicated and their bloodlines were an unimaginable tonic for those who cultivated the blood refinement Fiend Sutra. Su Zimo did not even dare to imagine what realm the blood face would grow to. When Dai Yu descended, she did not mention this matter. However, Su Zimo believed that the existence of the blood face could not have been hidden from Dai Yu. However, after Dai Yu descended, she had been fighting with the experts of the upper world and had no free time. In the end, Dai Yu exhausted the last bit of her phenomenon's strength and her figure dissipated. The reason why Su Zimo did not ascend to the upper world immediately was also because of the hidden danger of the blood face. After the battle, the emperors of the human race and the various races had to recuperate. Su Zimo persuaded the emperors of the various races to try their best to stay in the Dragon Bone Valley and gather together to prevent any accidents. Although he did not explain the exact reason, the emperors of the various races recalled the changes that happened to the dragon, Kuan and barbarian races before the battle and felt lingering fear. Furthermore, after this battle, the prestige of the martial emperor had already reached its limits, and even surpassed the eternal human emperor of the past. Su Zimo was only part of the reason, it was also because of Dai Yu. Since Su Zimo persuaded them, the emperors of the various races did not reject and stayed in the Dragon Bone Valley for the time being. There were many troublesome matters to deal with after the battle, and the emperors delegated the tasks to the patriarchs and mighty figures of the various races. In the blink of an eye, a month passed. Unexpectedly, Tianhuang mainland fell into a long-awaited peace. After that battle, the 10,000 races chose to recuperate in silence. The blood face did not appear either, and seemed to have vanished completely. Apart from some severely injured emperors who were recuperating in the Dragon Bone Valley, most of the emperors were mostly healed. This day, Su Zimo, the storyteller, and Long Ran gathered. Strange, could our previous guest be wrong? The storyteller frowned slightly. Perhaps the blood face has already attempted tribulation transcendence and left Tianhuang mainland? Both the storyteller and Long Ran knew about the existence of the blood face. Back then, Long Ran nearly died in Thousand Demon Valley. I don't think so. Su Zimo shook his head. He believed that the blood face would definitely not leave silently after causing such a huge commotion. Long Ran said, "In my opinion, the three of us should join forces and take a look at the 1,000-year blood sea in Thousand Demon Valley. I don't believe that we can't defeat a blood face even if we join forces." Su Zimo frowned slightly and was about to speak when his heart skipped a beat and his gaze intensified. He could sense the existence of the martial Dao prime body. Kunlun ruins. In the depths of a lake, it was deep and dark without much light. A purple-robed figure seemed to be lying at the bottom of the lake. The martial Dao prime body was in seclusion here and no one could sense him. Even if a living being passed by him, the martial Dao prime body would be a lifeless stone in the eyes and senses of that living being. At that moment, the martial Dao prime body woke up from his seclusion. The figure of the martial Dao prime body rose slowly from the bottom of the lake and gradually surfaced. He opened his eyes that shone with a resplendent divine light. The martial Dao prime body had benefited immensely from this seclusion. Initially, there was no path ahead for him. Without a path, he could not continue cultivating. No matter how many divine powers he fused, he would only be stuck on the spot. Now that he had perfected the martial Dao, he had finally created the remaining path. The cultivation of the martial Dao was different from the immortal, Buddhist and fiend Daos right from the beginning. The greatest emphasis of the martial Dao was the cultivation of the body. The body was a gigantic treasure with endless potential waiting to be triggered by cultivators. After the martial Dao prime body cultivated a martial spirit, his cultivation method was not much different from the immortal, Buddhist and fiend sections. There were still essence spirit secret skills, heaven and earth dharma characteristics, and conjoint bodies. However, at the Mahayana realm, the martial Dao prime body did not comprehend any divine powers. Instead, he forcefully smelted the divine powers into his flesh. From that moment on, the martial Dao was once again different from the cultivation techniques of the immortal, Buddhist, and fiend sects. After cultivating divine powers, one naturally relied on the materialization of the divine powers to fight against their opponents. As for the martial Dao prime body, He smelted divine powers directly to stimulate the power and potential of his body continuously. The martial Dao prime body sat crossed on the lake with his black hair fluttering without any wind. His eyes were closed and the martial spirit fire burned furiously as the power of his body and bloodline condensed continuously within his body. The divine power of the martial Dao furnace fused into every single inch of his flesh and bones, stimulating the life force potential of his body. The meaning of cultivation was to constantly stimulate the power of life. Suddenly, the power within the prime body had reached a critical point and limit. Boom! A loud bang sounded from the body of the martial Dao prime body. At that moment, it was as though a shackle had been broken through the prime body. A mysterious circular halo appeared behind the martial Dao prime body and condensed the power of the martial Dao. It interweaved with the Dao of the martial Dao and emitted a powerful power, causing the surrounding void to collapse and the ground to quake. With the illumination of that mysterious halo, the martial Dao prime body was like a god. Under the envelopment of the mysterious halo, the power of the martial Dao prime body far surpassed before. The martial Dao prime body did not stop and continued channeling the power in his body to condense. The aura of the prime body was still rising rapidly. This was the path created by the martial Dao prime body. Fate Ring's secret ground. After the conjoined body realm, one would cultivate the martial Dao and enter the Fate Ring's secret ground. The Fate Ring was like the growth ring of an ancient tree. The more Fate Rings one had, the more exuberant their life would be and the stronger their physique and bloodline would be. In the deduction of the martial Dao prime body, there were 9 levels to the Fate Ring's secret ground. Right now, the martial Dao prime body had only activated his first Fate Ring. The martial Dao prime body did not stop cultivating, and continued to break through the second Fate Ring. Half a month passed. A second bang sounded from the body of the martial Dao prime body. It was as though another shackle had been broken. Another halo appeared behind the first mysterious halo. The second Fate Ring. The aura of the martial Dao prime body surged, and he suddenly stood up. The sound of bones cracking could be heard from his body, and he exuded the aura of an emperor that looked down on the world. Instantly, the weather changed. Many living beings in the Kunlun ruins sensed that aura and their expressions changed, as though a calamity was about to descend the next moment. Chapter 1755 Red Lotus Karmic Fire. Chapter 1755 Red Lotus Karmic Fire. 2 Fate Rings appeared behind the martial Dao prime body, emitting a purple glow and divine light with a terrifying aura. The martial Dao prime body sensed the power in his body. Condensing 2 Fate Rings was equivalent to an emperor of the cultivation world. But now, the combat strength of the martial Dao prime body was comparable to the Green Lotus True Body and Dragon Phoenix True Body. The breakthrough of the martial Dao prime body did not stop. He wanted to condense his third Fate Ring. Ever since the martial Dao prime body smelted divine powers, he had only smelted lesser and greater divine powers and had not smelted supreme divine powers. If a supreme divine power could be smelted, a third Fate Ring could be formed. However, the martial spirit fire alone was almost unable to smelt supreme divine powers. The martial Dao prime body had to master a second type of flame. Furthermore, the grade, level and potential of that flame could not be too low. Up till now, the only flame in Tianhuang mainland that was worthy of the martial Dao prime body was the Dragon Phoenix flame. Even the sun essence fire of the Golden Crow was inferior in the eyes of the martial Dao prime body. However, the Dragon Phoenix flame of the Dragon Phoenix True Body was the innate talent of the taboo Dragon Phoenix. Unless the martial Dao prime body smelted the Dragon Phoenix True Body, there was almost no way he could control that flame. The martial Dao prime body had a calm gaze. Over the years, he had smelted many divine powers and countless cultivation techniques and secret skills. His mind contained a large amount of essence and profoundness. The martial Dao prime body wanted to comprehend a new flame. Back in the Dao inheritance ground, Su Zimo challenged the 3 tribulations domain. The second tribulation of the 3 tribulations domain was the karmic flames. At that time, it caused him immense pain and was unforgettable. At that time, the karmic flames burning in the three tribulations domain were caused by greed, anger, and obsession. However, the martial Tao prime body smelted countless cultivation techniques and divine powers and cultivated along the way, gaining a deeper understanding of negative karma. The birth of negative karma was not merely due to greed. Killing, stealing, and brazen words would result in negative karma. Negative karma was a consequence of the cycle of karma. In other words, every living being was born with karma and accompanied by negative karma. However, some of it was positive karma while others were negative. In the path of cultivation, cultivators engaged in killing and everyone was tainted by countless negative karma. Even Su Zimo was not spared. The negative karma of every living being was like a pile of firewood. As long as there was a single spark, it would ignite into a raging fire that burned their organs and flesh from the inside out. That was karmic flames. As long as the negative karma did not dissipate, the karmic flames would not extinguish. Negative karma exists because of the cycle of karma. With negative karma comes karmic flames. Karma was everywhere. Even if one was a high and mighty emperor, they would be shrouded by endless negative karma. However, no one would ignite it. Even if one comprehended countless divine powers and secret skills, they were still in the loop of karma and possessed negative karma. They could not avoid the pain of the karmic flames. The martial Tao prime body had a new comprehension and understanding of the karmic flames of the three tribulations domain. A violent storm brewed beside the martial Tao prime body. The storm connected heaven and earth and possessed a terrifying killing power, as though it wanted to tear everything apart. Filled with a powerful divine power, the storm shook the world. Supreme Divine Power Storm. Initially, the appearance of the martial Tao prime body attracted the attention of countless Kunlun clansmen. There were already many Kunlun clansmen speeding over. Now that the Supreme Divine Power Storm was formed, many Kunlun clansmen were even more shocked. "It's that person!" Some of the Kunlun clansmen recalled something. Previously, someone came to the Kunlun ruins and took the initiative to cause a divine power storm. I remember it too. Furthermore, that person managed to survive the divine power storm. Another Kunlun clansman said. It was no secret to the many Kunlun clansmen that the martial Tao prime body was smelting divine powers in the Kunlun ruins. However, the Kunlun clansmen did not know who he was and could not see the face of the martial Tao prime body clearly. They could only see a faint fog. Didn't that person already disappear? A Kunlun clansman was secretly speechless. I thought that this person was torn apart by the divine power storm. To think that his return would attract a supreme divine power storm. Let's go take a look. Kunlun clansmen from all over the Kunlun ruins rushed over. Within the supreme divine power storm, the martial Tao prime body did not circulate his blood chi to defend against the supreme divine power storm. Instead, he allowed it to tear through his body continuously. Scarlet lights shone from the body of the martial Tao prime body. If anyone's vision could penetrate the divine power storm, they would be shocked to discover that scarlet flames were burning inside and outside the martial Tao prime body. Karmic flames! Countless negative karma coiled around the martial Tao prime body as well. The power of the karmic flames even caused a supreme divine power storm. However, the strange thing was that the scarlet karmic flames in the martial Tao prime body's body did not emanate any divine powers. Karmic fire was not divine powers. It was an extremely unique power. Under the tempering of the karmic flames, the flesh of the martial Tao prime body became increasingly condensed, and the negative karma in his body was burned cleanly. His bones and organs shone with a resplendent glow. The two fate rings behind the martial Tao prime body shone faintly and their auras turned purer, resembling gods. Divine powers are no match for negative karma. The martial Tao prime body conjured a strange dermic seal that resembled a lotus with both hands. Suddenly he said 6 words that spread through the Kunlun ruins. It was like a dermic mandate. After those words were said, the countless divine powers in the Kunlun ruins calmed down instantly. The supreme divine power storm that was initially surrounding the martial Dao prime body gradually subsided as well. Although the storm was still revolving around the martial Dao prime body, it was no longer attacking the latter, it was protecting him. After those words were said, a tremendous might descended from the entire Kunlun ruins. It was as though an even stronger will was above the Kunlun ruins. In the supreme divine power storm, the martial Dao prime body smirked. The karmic flames burning in his palms gradually transformed into two crystalline red lotuses that resembled treasures of the world. There was no warmth in the two red lotus flowers. However, the aura released by the red lotus was extremely terrifying, and even the supreme divine power storm had to calm down. A second flame was condensed in the body of the martial Dao prime body after the martial spirit fire. Red lotus karmic fire. Although the red lotus karmic fire was not a divine power, it could smelt divine powers. In fact, even the supreme divine powers in the Kunlun ruins could be smelted by the red lotus karmic fire. Under the tempering of the martial spirit fire and red lotus karmic fire, the cultivation speed of the martial Dao prime body would increase significantly. Under the tempering of the two flames, his body would also become increasingly terrifying. Boom! Right then, another loud bang sounded from the body of the martial Dao prime body. Behind him, another purple fate ring condensed outside the second one. His aura surged and his strength rose. The third fate ring appeared, and the martial Dao prime body had already broken through to an even higher level. Chapter 1756 Annihilation. Chapter 1756 Annihilation. For the past few days, Suzimo did not cultivate and merely sensed the activity on the side of the martial Dao prime body. He only composed himself after the martial Dao prime body condensed his third fate ring. After condensing his third fate ring, the power controlled by the martial Dao prime body had far surpassed the green lotus true body and dragon phoenix true body. Although the martial Dao prime body had yet to undergo the tribulation transcendence and ascend, his strength had already surpassed his two true bodies. In the blink of an eye, another month had passed since the martial Dao prime body came out of seclusion. The emperors that were recuperating in the Dragon Bone Valley had already recovered from their injuries. After that battle, many emperors comprehended something and even broke through one after another to comprehend another supreme divine power. In the past 2 months, many patriarchs comprehended supreme divine powers and became emperors. During this period of time, the 10,000 races of Tianhuang mainland rested and recuperated. It was unusually peaceful, and the emperors of the various races were prepared to bid farewell. Outside the Dragon Bone Valley, the emperors of the human race bid farewell to Suzimo and the others. Mystic Emperor, when are you prepared to undergo the tribulation transcendence? Monk Kongyun asked. I'm the palace guardian after all and have to guard Tianhuang mainland for a few years. I can only leave after I find the next palace guardian. The storyteller smiled. Kongyun, you've already comprehended 3 supreme divine powers and can prepare to undergo the tribulation transcendence and ascend. We'll talk about that later. Monk Kongyun shook his head gently and hesitated. Why? The storyteller asked. What's the problem? Longran said. Although there's a slim chance of survival for tribulation transcendence, no one can avoid it. We have to take this step eventually. Monk Kongyun smiled bitterly and sighed. To be honest, I'm a little afraid, sigh. The storyteller was silent. The battle 2 months ago had a huge impact on the hearts of the emperors of Tianhuang mainland. Against that apocalyptic power, even emperors were like ants that could die at any moment. For someone like Suzimo, even if it was not for Daiyu, he had a strong determination and was unshakable. Naturally, he was fearless and pressed forward. However, most people would inevitably feel a sense of fear and hesitation. Suzimo's gaze shifted. The other emperors fell silent as well. It was clear that Monk Kongyun was not alone. An emperor suddenly said, Actually, the upper world isn't as beautiful as we imagined. That's right. Why are we cultivating? Isn't it so that we can live a long life? Another emperor added. However, there's a 90% chance of death if we attempt the tribulation transcendence to ascend. Even if we survive and ascend to the upper world, we'll only be at the bottom of the hierarchy, and anyone can kill us. If that's the case, I might as well stay in the lower world and roam freely. The emperor expressed the thoughts of many emperors. Actually, over the years, there had been very few emperors who attempted tribulation transcendence. On the one hand, it was dangerous. On the other hand, it was also a form of fear towards an unknown place like the upper world. The worries of the emperors were not without reason. If they stayed in Tianhuang mainland, even if they exhausted their lifespans, they would have tens of thousands of years to live. However, if they chose to attempt tribulation transcendence to ascend, there's a chance they might die. Long Ran pouted. What's there to be afraid of? The path of cultivation is not a smooth one to begin with. Since you've chosen this path, don't turn back. Naturally, Long Ran was fearless towards the upper world. Su Zimo believed that the Azure Yen Beichen would definitely choose to ascend as well. That was because Yen Beichen had an obsession in his heart. He wanted to head to the upper world and search for a power that could revive Qin Pian Ran. This battle brought fear to everyone else. However, it was a form of hope for the Azure Yen Beichen. He had witnessed the power of the upper world. He believed that as long as he ascended to the upper world, he would definitely be able to find a way to revive Qin Pian Ran. After a moment of silence, Su Zimo looked at Monk Kong Yun and the other emperors and said slowly, "You guys are not wrong in your words and thoughts. If you stay in Tianhuang mainland, you might be able to live for tens of thousands of years. However, if you attempt the tribulation transcendence to ascend, there's a chance you might die immediately. However," Su Zimo paused for a moment, "only by ascending to the upper world will there be a chance of true longevity. Only by ascending to the upper world can one gain greater power and obtain a lifespan of 200,000 years, 300,000 years, or even longer. That's the only place where one can gain more knowledge and expand their horizons." Monk Kong Yun and the other emperors were deep in thought. The storyteller did not persuade further. For Monk Kong Yun and the other emperors, staying in Tianhuang mainland might be the best choice for them. Tribulation transcendence was extremely dangerous to begin with, and there was a high chance of death. Now that Monk Kong Yun was filled with fear, his chances of transcending the tribulation were even slimmer. Right then, a streak of light tore through the air and arrived before the many emperors in the blink of an eye. This person had a Confucian crown on his head and a pale face without any beard. He was slightly plump and held a folding fan in his hands. He was Lin Xuanji of Enigma Palace and was also the storyteller of this generation. "Why? What happened?" The storyteller frowned when he saw Lin Xuanji's strange expression. Lin Xuanji composed himself and said, "The Blood Vine race was destroyed and hundreds of thousands of clansmen died without exception." Ah! When the emperors heard that, their expressions changed. Although the Blood Vine race was defeated this time round, they still had a few emperors and more than 10 patriarchs. Su Zimo did not annihilate them either. In just 2 months, hundreds of thousands of blood vines were killed. "The emperors of the Blood Vine race are dead too?" the storyteller asked with a grim expression. "Dead?" Lin Xuanji gulped. "When I heard the news, I couldn't believe it, and went to the ancestral ground of the Blood Vine race personally to take a look." At that point, a look of fear flashed through Lin Xuanji's eyes, as though he recalled a terrifying scene with lingering fear. "That place has already turned into a sea of blood without any signs of life. Countless Blood Vine clansmen died regardless of their cultivation realms," Lin Xuanji said. "You're way too reckless." The storyteller was a little reproachful and turned to look at Su Zimo with a questioning expression. "Who could have done it? The terrifying thing about this is that the entire process of exterminating the entire Blood Vine race happened in silence. Even emperors like us did not notice it at all." Su Zimo frowned in thought. His first reaction was Monk Daming. However, what was Monk Daming's motive for doing that? Had Monk Daming already cultivated to such an extent after they did not meet for a period of time? Or rather, was it the blood face? However, on second thought, Suzimo shook his head. The Blood Face was closely related to Dao Lord Blood Fiend. However, Dao Lord Blood Fiend had half the bloodline of the Bloodvine race in his body, and there was no reason for him to do such a thing. How much hatred did someone have to possess in order to exterminate an entire race? Chapter 1757 Tao Wu Demon Emperor. Chapter 1757 Tao Wu Demon Emperor. Let's go to Thousand Demon Valley and Thousand Year Blood Sea. A cold glint flashed through Suzimo's eyes as he said in a deep voice. No matter who destroyed the Bloodvine race, he had to head to the Thousand Year Blood Sea and resolve the latent danger of the Blood Face. All right. The storyteller and the other emperors agreed without hesitation. All the emperors present tore through the void with ease and descended from the Dragon Bone Valley, arriving above the Thousand Demon Valley. This time round, Suzimo and the others did not hide their tracks. Now that many emperors appeared at the same time after the battle of the 10,000 races, many living beings were attracted, wondering if something big had happened again. This time round, Suzimo's Green Lotus True Body and Dragon Phoenix True Body moved at the same time. The martial Dao Prime Body was still cultivating and smelting divine powers in the Kunlun ruins, so he did not appear. Suzimo and the others arrived above the Thousand Year Blood Sea and looked down. Back when Suzimo, Monkey and the others first saw the Blood Sea, they were extremely shocked. Right now, he had already cultivated to the Emperor Realm and stood at the peak of Tianhuang mainland. In his eyes, the Blood Sea was like a blood-colored lake. Strange. Monk Kongyan frowned. There's a strange power emanating from the Blood Sea that even my spirit consciousness can't detect. Apart from the storyteller and the other emperors did not know about the Blood Face. This is the battlefield of the Thousand Demon Tribulation back then. An emperor looked at the corpses surrounding the Thousand Year Blood Sea and murmured. Suzimo looked at the bones beneath his feet and the Thousand Year Blood Sea. Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes and exclaimed softly. Looking down, he suddenly realized that the Thousand Year Blood Sea beneath his feet was like a blood-colored eyeball. The white bones that surrounded him were like the whites of the eye. The white bones and blood sea formed a strange blood-colored eye. That eye seemed to be staring at the many emperors in midair. A strange glint flashed through the eye. At the same time, ripples appeared in the Thousand Year Blood Sea. Strange, why do I feel like I'm being watched? An emperor murmured uneasily. This place is truly sinister, another emperor added. Ah! Suddenly, an emperor exclaimed with a shocked expression. He pointed at the Thousand Year Blood Sea beneath his feet and said with a trembling voice. It seemed to have blinked just now. What do you mean by blink? Stop making a fuss and explain yourself. Longran frowned. That's right. The emperor seemed to be extremely shocked and could not explain for a moment. With a grim expression, Suzimo said slowly, This Thousand Year Blood Sea should be the eye of a living being and it blinked earlier. What? The storyteller, Longran and the other emperors were shocked. Roar! Suddenly, a deafening roar sounded from the depths of the Thousand Demon Valley, as though a powerful fiend demon had awakened. That roar spread through the entire Tianhuang mainland. Be it in any corner of Tianhuang mainland or any living being, they could hear it clearly and sense the terrifying power contained in the roar. The living beings of Thousand Demon Valley trembled and did not dare to move. Even some grand demons and old demons were not spared. Above the Thousand Year Blood Sea, some weaker emperors felt their ears buzz and their bloodlines floated uncontrollably under the roar. The emperors were pale and bewildered. Crack! 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 Immediately after, gigantic cracks appeared on the ground beneath the emperor's feet and extended in all directions with the Thousand Year Blood Sea as the center. An extremely strong demonic chi and blood stench emanated from the cracks. This time round, all the emperors could see it clearly. Indeed, the Thousand Year Blood Sea revealed a gaze that only living beings possessed. Ridicule, cruelty, and mockery. The ground beneath everyone's feet protruded slowly, forming a mound the size of a mountain, as though a supreme fiend was about to break out of it. Boom! Boom! There was a loud bang and the ground shook. A gigantic figure broke through the ground and rose rapidly. Demonic chi coiled around its body, and its blood chi surged. 100 feet, 1,000 feet, 10,000 feet. In the blink of an eye, the gigantic figure had already broken through the height of 10,000 feet and was almost indomitable. Burying its knees on the ground, it waved its arms with torrential flames and a terrifying might that swept through the world. Countless rocks flew everywhere. The gigantic rocks created by the rise of the figure contained immense power. Many emperors retreated and scattered. Against that terrifying aura, Long Ran revealed his dragon form. However, his dragon form was only slightly more than 10,000 feet long, and was not much thicker than the living being's arm. The moment Long Ran transformed into his dragon form, the terrifying living being waved its gigantic palm and grabbed the 10,000 feet long dragon in his palm, as though he was tearing through the void and dust. The claws of the terrifying living being extended one after another, and pierced Long Ran's protective dragon scales instantly, leaving bloody holes on his body. Long Ran struggled. However, Long Ran, who was more than 10,000 feet tall, was like a python that could not break free from the grip of this powerful living being. Roar! Long Ran roared in pain. The dragon roar shocked the 10,000 races. At that distance, the dragon roar could release an extremely terrifying killing power. However, the terrifying living being did not seem to have heard anything. Exerting strength in its arms, it roared and tore Long Ran into two, dyeing the void red with his dragon blood. That scene was extremely shocking. The bloodline of the dragon race was extremely strong. Even if someone could kill an emperor of the dragon race, there was no way they could tear the body of an emperor of the dragon race apart. How terrifying was the power released? The emperors were stunned on the spot with pale expressions. At that moment, it was too late even if Suzimo attacked. When Long Ran saw that the situation was bad, he abandoned his body and escaped with his essence spirit. When Long Ran's essence spirit escaped, the terrifying living being did not chase after it, and merely harumphed in disdain. It grabbed the half of the dragon that was bleeding and stuffed it into its mouth. Crack! 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 The living being bit the flesh of an emperor of the dragon race and devoured it in huge mouthfuls. Long Ran escaped and hurriedly circulated blood rebirth to reconstruct his body. Even so, he was still shocked and furious when he saw his body that he had abandoned earlier on devoured by this terrifying living being. It's way too strong! Suzimo's expression turned grim. The strength of that living being had even surpassed the former Heavenly God Emperor, Hell Witch Emperor, and the others. At that moment, the dust gradually dispersed, and Suzimo's gaze landed on the living being. The living being had a human face, tiger legs, and pitch black short fur all over its body. On both sides of its mouth, a pair of sharp pig teeth soared into the skies. Behind the living being was a gigantic and thick tail that swept back and forth. It had a ferocious gaze and a blood glint as it glared at Suzimo and the others. Tao Wu? Frowning slightly, Suzimo compared it to the records in the ancient books, and the name of a ferocious beast flashed through his mind. Tao Wu, Demon Emperor! Right then, the storyteller and the other emperors exclaimed with shocked expressions. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.